Director of Technical, what is Dylan's title? Oh, IT. Okay, IT. Did a lot of work on our sound system. And so if everyone is here for the first time, you might not notice, but for those of you who have suffered through not hearing anything in the past, this is much improved, and hopefully it's loud and clear for everyone, especially in the back. So great. So we're first going to start with a few words from Fire Chief Jim Van Gore. He's going to be speaking about the two candidates that will be sworn in this evening, firefighter Dane Knudsen and firefighter Shelby Taylor.
Hey, good evening, everybody. First person we're going to swear in is firefighter Dane Knudsen. He grew up in Ridgewood, and he graduated from Ridgewood High School. He joined the volunteers in 2011 and graduated from Fire Academy in 2012. After that, he took the civil service test and scored high, and we just hired him January 23rd of this year. So we're going to be swearing him in tonight, and we're proud to have him as a fireman.
Come on up, Dean.
What's that?
Take that. And who's holding the Bible? Okay, so you all stand right here. Hi, Connie. Okay, let's just get this kind of figured out. Caroline, so all right. Why don't you kind of turn to the audience? Okay. Okay. Right hand on the Bible, left hand up, okay? You'll repeat after me. I, Dane Knudsen, do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of office of firefighter to the best of my ability, so help me God. Congratulations. I just want to point out that Marion Brown was here in 2011 and was the photographer when he was sworn in as a volunteer back then. So, with all council members, come on in. Come on in.
We'll squeeze in.
Please look at Marion, Boyd, whoever. Okay. All right, very good. Congratulations. Shelby Taylor, come on up. So you want to say a few words first?
Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple words about Shelby. Firefighter Taylor is our first female firefighter in Ridgewood, and also the first female firefighter in Bergen County. So we're really proud. Shelby grew up in Ridgewood. She graduated from Ridgewood High School. Right after high school, she joined the Marines and was stationed overseas in Italy and Spain. Since then, she came back, took the civil service test, and scored really high. So we're really proud to have her, and we're happy that she's our first female firefighter. So.
On the Bible. And you'll repeat after me. We've done this before. I, Shelby Taylor,
I, Shelby Taylor,
do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America
to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of office of firefighter
of office of firefighter
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Okay, so this is when the room empties out, unless you all want to stay for the meeting. Fun.
On my phone or
Really?
I just texted Dylan to see.
Okay, let me go tell the IT person that.
Okay, great.
It's only been like a football.
Anyway,
Yeah.
escaped my brain. Oh, look at how sweet. Shelby's very lovely. Very good. All right, moving on to public comments. We'll have public comments. All right, just give it one, you can just wait right there. Let's just let this crowd kind of quiet down. I feel bad we didn't get Jane Flowers or a card. Okay, all right. All right, so if we can just ask everyone who's not staying to enjoy the rest of the evening. And public comment, name and address, not to exceed 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, members of council. My name is Joseph Ferranti. I live at 610 Hillcrest Road, and I'm happy to be here tonight because I haven't been here in a long time. I've lived for over 40 years at Hillcrest Road, and tonight I'm going to tell you about what's happening in the Willard District. About late last week, a petition began to be circulated.
Wait, can you understand? Can you understand?
The residents,
All right, Joe, just hang on one.
Can't shut the door.
I think we're having difficulty hearing.
I'll pause the time. We gotta just wait for them to get downstairs.
Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry, you got your...
Yeah, we're not holding this against you. The clock's not ticking. It's all good. All right, great. Go ahead, Joe.
late last week, the residents began circulating the petition. People who signed that petition were strongly opposed to any change in the traffic pattern on Glenwood Avenue. Specifically, any change to make other than a two-way crossing across the railroad tracks by the Hoboken station. I have with me tonight the fruits of that petition, that circulation of it. We have signed slightly less than 400 residents to show you the intensity of the feeling in the neighborhood. It's a situation which really should not be addressed in a haphazard manner. I don't know of any studies that have been done that evaluate the impact of closing that passageway. Informally, tonight, while I was walking my dog, I stood at the head of Upper Boulevard and Glenwood Avenue at 6:05, and I counted no fewer than 30 cars in the westbound direction coming up the hill from the station. What I understand from Mr. Rudisheiser and Ms. Maitland have all spoken to the state official who is apparently doing a study, and they spoke to this official in terms of perhaps a one-way solution. That's simply unacceptable. It's simply, it's going to create a disruption of very great significance. My purpose in being here tonight is to enlist your support as a council, as a governing body, to make sure that the status quo is maintained. There are many other solutions to the problem other than changing the road pattern. The road pattern is a last resort. It should be used very carefully. We would trust that the state would do it in a very deliberative manner and in a public manner. And so far, we haven't seen any of that. I have contacted the state, and they are receptive to receiving this petition, which I will file here tonight with you. And we expect to continue to circulate the petition. I expect we'll have almost every household in the Willard District signing on. It's an important issue, and it cannot be overstated. So we trust that this governing body will do what's necessary to continue the pattern that has been established for decades, if not almost 100 years, that's been in existence.
Yeah, so please, do you want to give us a copy of the petition
I do.
this evening? And we hear you, and I know that there's a lot of folks I was fully anticipating. Sure, that's fine.
Do you have an original of this? I have original. Okay, because, did you want to speak, and then I'll just mention something that just came in today?
Oh, yeah, go on ahead, Heather.
Okay, today, Mr. Redeshauser forwarded to me, it's called a memorandum of record, and that's basically where, I just want to make sure, New Jersey DOT lays out what it is that they're going to do at that crossing, and brings in New Jersey Transit, brings in the borough of Hohokus, brings in the village of Ridgewood into that memorandum of record. It's going to be published, is my understanding, and the reason I'm asking if you have an original is because the end of it says, anyone not in accord with these provisions, meaning what they lay out, which one of it is the one way down the hill at Glenwood Road, must reply in writing within 30 days, and all submissions must include name or agency, Aqua crossing name, and DOT docket number. So I would recommend that you, on behalf of these people, if you're the petition circulator, you would give this to DOT. It will be. As I said, we just got this today, and it was a courtesy copy, actually. It was mailed certified yesterday, so we didn't receive it today. We'll probably receive it tomorrow or Friday. So,
Finding the facts that they're making, determination
they're laying out the facts, and then they also indicate what it is that each of the municipalities must do in order to effectuate their plan. Chris, did I state that all correctly, hopefully? If not, you can come up and correct it. That's pretty correct. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that we're hearing it from residents, as you have your petition. We're hearing it from Hohokus. We're in contact with the mayor of Hohokus and their folks. So there's concern on both sides of that. So we're doing the best we can with it, and we'll do everything we can for our residents, obviously.
So I assume that this is a public procedure that they're initiating.
That's correct.
Good. Well, that's great.
And so all of these people who are signing it have the opportunity to indicate why they may be opposed to it, and there will be it's an email address, I believe, where it's sent. So that will be published as well. So all these people should now indicate to NJDOT why they're opposed to it. It says the reason they may change their mind is for meritorious reasons. They don't define meritorious, but that's what they say.
So Heather, just is that that can be sent to?
I can do that too.
That can be sent by email as well, because I have a bunch of folks that are probably on that petition that emailed me just to register to get information on that. So we can actually shoot it by email.
Yeah, we will.
So that's what we'll do. We'll publish it everywhere. We'll put it out into the world and let everybody.
Can I give Matt Rogers my email address, or you have my email address?
I have your email address.
Yeah, and I have your email address.
Okay, great.
From Barbara too.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor.
Good.
Thank you,
Thank
Councilman.
you.
Bye.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jane Remus, 118 Madison Place, and I just want to quickly talk to you about it shouldn't be that big a deal, I guess, but about Clinton Avenue and why it should be open during the school day now. When we moved here in 1992, I'm not sure if, I think it was already closed the full day then, but there were crossing guards at Clinton and Godwin, at Clinton, at Ridgewood Avenue at the school, and they were there morning arrival, afternoon dismissal, and for an hour at lunch. And there was an hour lunch period at Ridge School, allowing a child to walk home if they lived nearby and walk back. I guess also, maybe kindergartners, hopefully with their parents, could be walking, afternoon kindergartner would be walking home, an afternoon kindergartner would be arriving at school, morning kindergartner would be leaving school, the crossing guard was there. Well, quite a few years ago, I don't know how many, they started making lunch only 45 minutes because they needed more academic time. So at that point, they dismissed the noontime crossing guards because you didn't have time to walk home. Then after that, they made a new security rule that if you want to pick up your child for lunch for that 45 minutes, you had to go into the school, sign them out of the office, and then come back out and do the same thing when you had to sign them back in. So basically, most kids can't go home anymore. But anyway, so someone at a safety meeting a couple years back said, well, we could open Clinton during the day now, and the residents felt that it should be kept closed all day because the kindergartners might be walking. So that's how it was. Well, now there's full-day kindergarten. So, and I know tonight you're going to, talk about opening it during the full day. So I just wanted to urge you to open it during the day, because there are sometimes events, the science fair, the holiday show, where parents could use that space, to park if there's no parking, or even just use it as a route to get to school. So, I'd like to urge you to please vote on opening it during the school day. And, I understand the proposal is to keep it closed arrival and dismissal hours. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jean. Thank you. Okay. No other public comment? We're moving on.
Our first presentation is from the Ridgewood Conservancy for Public Lands, and it's on a butterfly sensory garden at the stable.
And so I'll announce you, we have Cynthia Hallaby here this evening and Chris Raimondi. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Cynthia Hallaby, 374 Evergreen Place, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Conservancy for Ridgewood Public Lands. I'm the president. I put together a packet for you. You're kind to have us today to make this presentation. You'll find that the first page describes the activities of the Conservancy over the past 6 years. We're very proud of the fact that we have been able to raise $35,000 approximately from the community, and we have invested all of that money in the parklands. This does not include pro bono work done by many very generous local landscapers. Also in your package is a copy of this plan, which was drawn up by Chris Raimondi, who's president of the Raimondi Group in Hohokus. And it is really in great part thanks to Chris that the Conservancy will not only be providing the community with a wonderful new garden, but with a great educational opportunity for many of our young people. We have already got a young lady who's going to be working with us. She's a Ridgewood resident, she's a Girl Scout, and she's working on her Gold Award. So we have also made a presentation to the Parks and Recreation Committee to get their approval and their input. And we are very conscious of the fact that we must abide by the guidelines of the Ridgewood water restrictions. So Chris, who is most generously donating all of his time to the Conservancy to help us attain this wonderful goal. Chris has drawn up this great plan, and on top of doing that for us, he's going to be our cultural consultant, and he is going to be in charge of this entire project and oversee its success. So thank you, Chris, for this wonderful gift to the community. We're excited to be working with you. And would you please make the presentation on this wonderful garden?
Sure, thanks very much. In front of you, you have on the packet the overview called the Sensory Butterfly Garden. This garden has been designed with great cooperation with Parks.
No, hold the handheld. There's a handheld microphone there if you want to use that. Is that better? Just turn it on.
It takes like a second.
Is it on?
It takes a second for it.
Test.
Ah, there you go.
This garden has been designed with great cooperation with Parks and Recreation and the Conservancy. This overview photo that you have that has the walkway in it They came to us with the requirements that we'd like to do a butterfly garden, and we added the term sensory garden to this. So people that were perhaps challenged, we're providing a walkway through the center that a wheelchair can go through, and then we're using some boulders locally sourced to create elevation, a little bit of an elevation, so if one was in a wheelchair, they could roll up and smell and enjoy the fragrance of some of the plants and flowers that we'll be having. There'll be butterfly bushes and plant material that attracts butterflies, of course. Throughout the area, we have extensive shrubbery planned, some trees, a pergola, and the most important part of the design is on probably photo number 2 in your packet, where we designed some areas that were, the stable has a lot of children that are coming there for camp throughout the different parts of the different times of the year. So we've put into this a vegetable zone, a fun zone, several areas where the children can actually play and enjoy. And this was partially come to be through the ideas that we got working with Nancy Bigos over there, and simple things like having colorful booths filled with annuals and perennials and vegetables that the children can plant. It's a work in progress. We've set it up so that it would basically be 3 phases. We're here tonight to explain to the council what we'd like to do. The funding of it is going to be completely sustained by in-house donations the Conservancy raises. So there's really no budget dollars other than some in-kind cooperation from village employees to help do some of the mechanical things that are necessary to keep within the rules. I'm not taking any fees for this at all, and if we have enough budget dollars, we'll include some water features and a nice pergola, and we located some bluestone this week that we can use for the walkway. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them from the horticultural standpoint. But it's a fun project, and we hope that the children of the current children and folks and residents from the village can enjoy this garden. It's going to be behind the stable in an area that's really nothing right now. There's a photo there of the current site. So it's behind the stable on the brook side. Any questions?
So there's no actual enclosure, it's just based on plants that attract?
Correct. There's no structure where it's enclosed. Everything would be open.
Right, sensory, okay.
And we'll be planting it when the village water restrictions will be lightened up. In the fall, we'll be doing hardscape materials in the summer months, actually after the students or the children leave. So month of August would be hardscape time.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Seems like a great project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bringing this to us. Thanks. And actually, with water restrictions, with new plantings, there's a 21-day waiver, I believe, that you can get where you can water every single day. So I don't know if that helps or...
We'll take it.
Yeah, so this is beautiful, and we'd like to thank Cynthia Hallaby, Chris Ramundi, and the Conservancy for all these wonderful programs, projects, and for all of your hard work, energy, and effort to keeping us and the village beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there something else? Okay, good. All right. Very good. Moving on. We're going to have a motion to suspend the work session and convene a special public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Boyd?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes. I'll call this meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache?
Here.
Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Boyd?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Here.
Mayor Knudsen?
Here.
The following resolutions, number 17-144 through 17-145, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the village council. There's a brief description beside each resolution to be considered on the consent agenda. Each resolution will be read by title only.
17-144, authorized renewal of intent to participate in Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Act Program, and Emergency Solutions Grant. 17-145, authorized execution of grant for participation in the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Wade?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Wade?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes, and with that, we're back. Okay.
Okay, our first discussion item is for Ridgewood Water, and, hold on one sec, and it's improvements to the booster transfer stations. The Village of Ridgewood received bid proposals for the improvements to the booster transfer stations. These will make necessary improvements to 5 booster transfer stations within Ridgewood Water. 7 bid specifications were picked up and 2 were received. The firm of Fred Devens Construction was the lowest bidder, and they met all the bid criteria. We are recommending the award of $827,000 to Fred Devens Construction, and it's found in a water account number, existing number.
Any questions on this or comments? No? Okay.
Okay, the next item is award of contract design and construction of the granular activated carbon treatment system at the car treatment facility. In 2016, Arcadis US Inc. was contracted to evaluate alternatives for the removal of PFCs at the car treatment facility. PFCs are unregulated contaminants that the U.S. EPA has been evaluating for potential health effects. On May 19, 2016, the U.S. EPA issued a new health advisory for PFCs, in particular PFOAs and PFOS. Levels of both contaminants are present in variable levels in the groundwater at the CART facility. Based on Mr. Calaby's review of the study, he recommends that Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water proceed with the engineering, design, and construction of a granular activated carbon treatment system at the CART facility. It's a professional services contract with Arcadis US Inc. in the amount of $303,000. This funding is found in the 2017 Water Capital Fund.
Okay. Any questions on this?
Quick question.
Okay.
Why wouldn't this be considered part of the bigger fund that they were going to, like, this is the other capital improvements that we're going to do, wouldn't this be considered in
It's
that?
one of them. It's within that capital.
So it's within that full
Correct.
budget? Oh,
Correct.
okay.
The capital budget, right.
Okay.
So it's already appropriated, it's already been adopted, the funding, and this is to bring to you, this is what they want to, one part of it, this is what they want to spend the money on.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on.
Okay, the next is rebid Central Business District Valet Parking Concession Pilot Program. I think I'm going to have Mr. Rutherford come up for this discussion in case there are questions. There were 4 plan holders eligible to bid, and we received 1 bid. The bid quoted was $103,194 for the service in the proposal, which was for 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights from 5 p.m. I believe it was until 2 a.m. The low bidder submitted a complete bid package with all necessary information. They also submitted a portfolio of comparable work. I have to say, as we discussed it, Mr. Rutherford and I, he was very impressed with this group. They actually are from New York City. It's called LAZ Parking. And again, everything was in order with their bid, which many times we don't find with bidders, so that's why it was impressive. They are professional company that does this for a living, and in various locations throughout New York, it looks like, in Long Island, and I don't know how much work they do in New Jersey, but they're certainly a professional firm. So this is for your discussion as to whether or not we can go forward with this kind of a bid, or if we want to restructure it again. As you know, we did go out previously, and we were looking to see how much bidders would give us for the opportunity to have this kind of service, and then they asked us to, instead of them having to find parking lots, that we would provide parking lots, which we did in this bid, but it still looks like it may be, it is a lot of money, and that's for the 6 months trial period, the $103,000.
So, questions? I guess we'll, go ahead, Jeff.
Chris, did they give you kind of an annual budget, or is this just for 26 weeks? In other words, if they decided to move forward with this for a year, is it going to be double this? Is it going to be 206,000? Did you get a feel for that?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, it's only for the 6-month trial period. It's for the 3 days indicated, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, from the hours of 5 p.m. to, I believe, 2 a.m. That's what their hourly rate is based on, so yes, you're correct, it's for 26 weeks. It is a pilot study. We structured it in that manner so that if we did go with this, after the 6-month period, the village council and the village could decide whether they would want to continue it further or suspend it. It would be based on the results.
And they would find parking spots for these cars. In other words, they'd kind of run around the town, or are there spots that are designated for this?
In this bid, because the feedback we got from the non-responding bidders the first time round, we're going to provide them with parking lots, whether it'll be a municipal lot or an arrangement made with a private lot. There's a private lot near the Van Ness pickup site that may be utilized. For the Broad Street, East Ridgewood Avenue site, we'll have to see whether there's capacity in the Hudson Street lot, or if any of the other adjacent private lots would be willing to let the cars be parked there. However, what the price you're seeing for the $103,000, that does not include any fees that the village would incur for utilizing private lots. That's yet to be determined.
Yeah, so is there any kind of estimate or guess that you might have as it relates to us having to lease some of the spaces in some of these private lots? Do you think that's going to happen?
Again, this is a pilot. It's something we have to try out. We'll have to see. We'll have to make arrangements. If it is successful, then there may be that need. If it is not as successful or doesn't draw as much interest from the patrons of the business district, maybe much less so.
Okay. Do we have it in the budget, by the way?
No.
We don't?
We would have to bond or something to that effect.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, is there any way, has anyone reached out to the business community? Because I know there's several businesses now that do their own valet parking and they pay for a permit. Was there any interest in anybody helping to maybe offset some of the costs for this pilot program who maybe are doing valet currently, or any new interest if the village was going to run it?
What we found out in talking with some of the valet companies, including ones that currently work in the village, that were aware of the first time we bid this, but did not bid it because of the way we had structured it. They have said that they found in their experience working in the village for the 3 locations that currently have valet service, that the patrons who utilize the valet want to be picked up right at the doorway or right at the entrance to the establishment that has that service. The way this bid was structured, and our understanding is how we presented it this time round, is those 3 valet companies would still be in operation concurrent with the central valet if the council wishes to go forward with it.
Thank you.
Councilman Hache?
Did they, in the proposal, 103,000, any mention as to how much personnel will be dedicated to this? I know it's 3 days a week, but how many parking attendants would that imply? That's for the 2 locations. That would be 2 attendants and 1 supervisor. So a total of 6 individuals at their quoted hourly rate in the proposal for each of those 3 nights per week. Okay. Because there was, so there was a slight change also. So originally it was only contemplating one location, one pickup location, which was right next to Van Nest. And we looked a little bit further, and then we're talking about having two pickup locations, Van Nest still being one, and the second one being the small parking lot next to where the Christmas tree is placed on the other side of the train tracks. Because the understanding was that we would have to provide parking lots for them to use. So thinking goes that the lots that are least utilized, you know, when the restaurants sort of come on live at after 6 p.m., we could use the ones east of Van Nest, and then for the second location, we could use even the train station. My concern with the hours being 5 p.m. to 2 a.m., I think 5 p.m. might be a little bit early. I don't think we'll be able to source enough parking for these guys to use at 5 p.m., nor have that much demand for valet parking at 5. I think that typically that turnover, that switch happens around 6 p.m. 103,000 sounds a little high, but when you consider that on average it's costing each of the restaurants that operate valet parking today at least $50,000. That's $150,000 just for 3 restaurants. This would be, assuming that we allow those 3 restaurants to continue to operate their own valet service, this would now open it up to the other 60-plus restaurants that could use it.
I guess, you know, just looking at the proposal, I think it would be difficult for us to even do the pilot without knowing who would even be interested in, I mean, I park at the cottage lot and walk whenever I go to dinner in town, so I don't know how many people actually use the valet. I don't know if we have those statistics before we would, you know, have them all standing out there waiting for people to come and use it.
The information we have is on the current form of valet, and that is, as I said earlier, much more door-to-door to the individual establishment that has that service. This would be at 2 central locations. Patrons utilizing it would have to realize they'd have to still walk a couple blocks or a block to the establishment they wish to go to. But they wouldn't have to spend multiple times circling the block looking for a parking space.
Now, it's also important to note that this is really relating only to the RFP for the services provided by the valet company. What it doesn't contemplate is the offset, because this parking is not for the village to all of a sudden provide free valet parking for shoppers and diners. It's for that service to have a fee, and we can figure out based on the estimated number of cars and the attendance what the fee per car would be. So somebody's going to pay for it. It's either going to be the shopper and the diner or the establishment that's going to sort of validate the parking and pay for that service.
So when we started this endeavor, and I recall that you and I had that conversation, and you kind of had this idea that this would be really great, and the cars would kind of circle around, and it had almost like a natural flow for a drop-off and a pickup, and that made a lot of sense to me. But I always understood that this was going to be something that would be used for valet, period, and then we would stop doing the valet with the restaurants that are currently doing it because of the traffic mess and the difficulties. As a matter of fact, just recently, I had an email from a resident complaining about that, and I thought that was the goal. The objective was to have one central valet and to have those bigger, more active restaurants participate in that, and that would be what offset the cost, because right now then we would be competing with them for parking lot space as well, and the lion's share of customers could actually be coming from those particular restaurants. So we almost are starting, you're starting actually in somewhat of a deficit for, and so I'm just wondering, I guess we would have to know which restaurants who would be signing on to this, and then are they willing to commit to X amount of dollars? Because I don't think that we should be offering, free valet service is what it would really turn out to be. If we can't cover that amount, then somewhere where the taxpayers are eating.
Yeah, but I think now having the starting point, the reference point of being what it would cost us to provide that service, then polling the restaurant saying, hey, listen, who's willing to participate? What's the average sort of flow of customers you get in here at night? Now we can come up on what it would cost per car, based on that 103,000 for the pilot period, what it would cost per car for us to park. And then the second part of that is, are customers willing to pay whatever it is, $5, $6 to
Right.
park if they're not visiting a restaurant or establishment that's supporting it. So there's still two sort of steps here that we need to explore.
Right, so we need that data, that information before we can advance this. Okay, so do we have, who's the group, or do we have a committee or someone that we're going to be doing that outreach, or who do we want to do that?
So we're going to talk about that at CBDAC on
Okay.
tomorrow, Thursday.
Okay, great, okay. Very good. All right, any other questions?
So then we'll bring it back after it's gone to CBDAC, and we'll discuss it further. Okay, thanks. The next one is Stylen Avenue parking. Currently, if you read down alphabetically, Stylen Avenue, both sides from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, from Linwood Avenue north to the cul-de-sac is no parking. And this was probably enacted when hospital employees were parking over there. And I believe Mayor Knudsen has received some requests from residents.
Yes, so sometimes seeing everyone on Facebook writing things, and then you respond and you say, okay, don't post it on Facebook, email us, and so somebody might take you up on that offer, and somebody in fact did. So this is a resident from Stylen Avenue who is concerned that the original parking restrictions were placed because Valley Hospital employees were parking during the last construction years ago. And so the issue now is that with no parking all day long on both sides, when there's an opportunity for someone to have, which is just something we experience over and over, companies coming, maybe you're having guests for lunch, maybe you have family from out of town visiting, inevitably you have somebody at your house. It just is the nature of being in this kind of neighborhood. So the question is to tickets being issued, unfair, overly restrictive parking, and the request to make this just no parking either in morning and afternoon, but not this all day no parking. So they're looking for relief from us because there's really no reason to have all day no parking on this street any longer. So I do know that a couple of years ago, I guess, according to this resident, there must have been a time when there was a suggestion to change it back to morning and afternoon, or to eliminate altogether no parking, and one resident was upset about that. So my thought was, before whether or not we move forward, or do we send letters to all the residents and just get some input as to what their feelings are, because if there's no construction, then the issue has essentially gone away. So any thoughts?
Island Avenue is a small enough street, maybe we should just mail the residents to let them know, so we don't do anything without the residents of Stylen Avenue knowing, because I've seen this one or two times before, where we're going to enact a change, and then there's a room full of Stylen Avenue residents, so I think the easiest thing would be to mail them and get their input first. So I'm in agreement with that.
So, and when we send this, do we want to just say, give a couple of options, rather than saying that we're just going to, it's an either this or that, it's, all or none? We say, we can show some morning and afternoon hours, and then say, would you be open to parking from completely lifting parking restrictions, or option 2 is to do from 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and then 2:30, 3:30, kind of give options and get feedback based on options, so it's not a yes or no is a approach. So can we do that and reach out to our Stylen Avenue residents?
So are those the hours you want to do? 8:30, 9:30, and 2:30, 3:30?
I would say we would kind of send a letter with options to completely lift all parking restrictions.
Right, I understand that.
And I guess the second one, anybody's welcome to weigh in. I'm just thinking, in the regular course of schools being nearby, because BF is still nearby, from 8:30 to 9:30, and then 2:30 to 3:30.
Okay.
So if that works.
Or maybe even one side of the street no parking and one side of the street parking.
Right, that's another good option too.
Okay. Okay, and, side.
And if the feedback actually, rather than do, people can email their feedback, which is easier,
Sure.
and then we can kind of compile that into some sense of order as to who's looking for what, and then we can figure out, which direction to go and how to proceed.
Okay, we can send out the letters and then compile the data.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you.
The next one is refund of taxes for disabled veteran. Block 3106, Lot 28 is eligible for a 100% disabled veterans deduction due to a wartime service-connected disability. It's been certified for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and it's effective November 28th, 2015. This homeowner actually just got this determination, even though it's about a year and a half later. The amount of property taxes billed and paid since that date is $15,703.27, and historically the council has gone back to that date when the Department of Veterans Affairs has declared that person 100% disabled. So I'm just getting confirmation that the council does want to refund these taxes back to that date, and then we'll do a resolution, if you are in concurrence, to allow this disabled veteran to have this refund, and then also to be able to go forward and not pay taxes. Everyone's in concurrence?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, this is one of those good things that we get to do. It's like a wonderful thing. Okay.
Okay. The next one is resolution urging the extension of a 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards. In July 2010, Governor of the New Jersey State Legislature enacted a permanent 2% cap on municipal and school board tax levies with limited exceptions. In December 2010, the governor signed a bill for a temporary 2% cap on police and fire arbitration awards in order to curtail increasing salary costs and to help keep property taxes under control. This temporary 2% cap was extended in 2014, and it will actually expire December 31st, 2017. However, the property tax levy 2% will remain in effect, and that's permanent. The League of Municipalities has encouraged all municipalities to urge the state legislature to extend the 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards for a period of 5 more years, so that they will have data to determine whether or not the 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards should be made permanent. They feel that it really hasn't been in existence long enough to allow proper metrics to be developed. It certainly has been helpful in arbitration awards throughout the state, and that, arbitrators are willing to stick to the 2% cap. Again, it's temporary, it expires at the end of this year, and so on behalf of the League of Municipalities, which represents all municipalities in New Jersey, and also it's a benefit to the taxpayer because it allows us to keep tax rates down, in that the arbitration awards are not astronomical. There is a cap to them. So this is for discussion by the council, and it's up to you whether or not we will adopt such a resolution.
I think this has been a helpful tool, not only for us, but for almost every municipality in New Jersey. So I would be in favor of moving forward with the resolution.
Okay.
Else?
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll do that then next week.
Heather, I'm sorry, I just wanted to be clear that I just recused from that, okay?
Okay, thank you. The next one is renovation of grade and pool restrooms. We solicited informal proposals for the renovation of the restrooms at grade and pool. One proposal is from Access Architectural Group, and it's the total amount is $30,800. Others who we solicited were unresponsive. The engineering group and Parks and Rec has has met with the Access Architectural Group, and the work needed at the restrooms is more comprehensive than you may initially assume. It may be that the resolution where we're seeking historical recognition of or designation for Graydon Pool may make work more complex because we may have to do certain colors or certain finishes. So if we desire to move forward, the design work and subsequent construction work could be completed by the June 2000 opening of the pool season. So if you do have questions, I know Mr. Weathersauser has met with this group, and so if you do, I'll have him come up.
Okay, questions? Yep.
Yes, please come up. Thank you.
Good evening again.
Good evening. So we'll start with Councilman Voigt.
Thank you. Chris, Heather, based on your comment, do you think this is going to go higher than the 30,000 because of the historical significance of it?
That's a difficult question to answer. I don't know where the site is in the historical designation process. I know the council recently passed that resolution. I don't know if and when the village will get notification that it has been listed or not, and whether this work would, if the council so desired, can be bid and built before that occurs.
But you're anticipating this to be done before the pool opens officially, right?
Well, the goal would be to get this done, if the council so desired, as I said, for the June 2018 opening of the season.
Okay, all right, got it.
We're looking at, in talking to the architect, there is a time frame that design work could be done, bid could be done, and then the contractor could be given a notice to proceed to start the work as soon as the weather breaks in the spring of 2018.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Chris, this is just for the design work, correct?
Just for the architectural services.
Yeah, when I was looking at it, I thought it included everything, and I thought, well, $30,000 for the whole project's not too bad. And then once I got into it, I realized that $30,000 doesn't even buy you a washer for a faucet. So
correct.
I'm not in favor of this. I don't want to be on a council that builds another $400,000 bathroom. So I think we might have to rethink this and keep it a little bit more modest. I mean, I can't see spending that much money on design work, and I'm scared to see what kind of bid numbers would come in.
I think the bids would be in the range of 180 to 240.
Thank you.
Councilman Hushay?
Yeah, my only question is, or concern, when we sat through a presentation about the historical preservation, that was my question. Is this going to complicate maintenance and renovation? And the answer, what I was told, was no. There will be no change. There will be no impact. But now it seems that it would complicate things, not just in terms of making it convenient, in terms of what colors will be limited to, but it would potentially jack up the cost of doing any work on the site. So I'll second Deputy Mayor's comments. I think that's something that we need to be very careful with and have to reconsider here.
Councilman Walsh?
So I'm not worried about the historic element, because a subway tile or a 4x4 tile is, you can get those cheap, and I guess it's just going to be the construction that'll be the bigger cost. I use those restrooms every summer. They do need upgrading, so I guess you don't want to do half the job and then have to come back and do it again. So, I mean, I think we should have a plan to upgrade those bathrooms, because the facility is going to continue to be used. We have more and more residents using the facilities. I would be in favor of doing the renovations, but I think we would really need to know exactly what the project would cost. And then, because it is a park, we could perhaps get matching funds.
One of the things that we've learned with matching funds For example, when we did the sloped entry into grade and pool, the matching, part of the funding came through HUD, and that is one of the reasons that we ended up having to go to SHPO, and we ended up having to tint the concrete of the ramp to match the surrounding sand. And that the dyes that I had to add to the concrete, we had to pick several, and they had to be approved by SHPO before we added them to the concrete. Well, also to your point on the cost, the bathrooms are relatively old. They are certainly not ADA compliant. Doorways certainly are not ADA compliant. They would have to be made ADA compliant, and that could cause a slight change in the exterior appearance because you'd have a wider doorway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we would have a challenge historically by widening the doorway. And I think that, like I said, the tile and all that other stuff would be easy. I guess it's just, it is a public building. It will need to be renovated at some point. So I guess what is our plan for it? Because we really do have to do it at some point.
You know, I think my question is, it almost seems to me that it doesn't matter whether it's a historic piece or just redoing a public facility, restroom facilities in a public space. I think the cost is probably going to be in this range either way. Would that be, I mean, it's an expensive endeavor.
It can be, I can't give an estimate as to what the historic listing label would add to the costs. That's an unknown at this time.
Right.
It's an unknown for several aspects. One, construction costs, materials, as we just discussed, and also the permit application and the review process with State Historic Preservation.
Mm-hmm. Now, and the other, and this building was built in what year?
I think it was also part of the WPA work in the 30s.
Okay.
We have the plans in our office. I just don't recall the exact date.
And so would it be less expensive? I mean, obviously it would be less expensive if there were no exterior alterations for ADA compliance and if we located a handicap accessible facilities elsewhere on the property.
Locating another facility on the property is also problematic. That is in the floodway of the Hohokus Brook. Anything over a certain size would need stream encroachment permits from NJDEP because of its proximity to the brook. I think almost the entire site's within the floodway or flood hazard area.
Okay.
And I think that's what drove some of the costs up on the vets field, the bathrooms behind the cash-out shell when that was done.
Yes, we had to put in flood vents on that structure. We also had to go through the permitting process to get a stream encroachment permit. As minor as it may seem, putting a bathroom on either side of the shell, that still, because of its location, required extensive permitting with DEP.
So I just only have to say that I do agree with Councilwoman Walsh that we need to have a plan because the facilities are getting older and they do need to be replaced, so we do need to have some plan in place and understand that this is the cost of maintaining such a facility. It's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I guess we'll think about it. We're going to mull it over, I guess. We're mulling it.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay, the next is our revenue expense report, so I'll have Bob Rooney, our CFO, come up. Don't go too far, Chris. Have it.
So I've done the quarterly report, only this time I did it same as last year, as of April 30th, because we didn't have budget numbers until we introduced in April. Going through each fund, you'll see some variations, and I tried to identify reasons for that. So if there was anything that was significantly above 33%, which would be the 4 months, I tried to identify what would have caused that. I didn't touch anything significantly below that because we pretty much know that encumbrances haven't been made in a lot of cases because department heads just haven't gotten around to it because we just adopted the budget. So if you have any questions on any of the line items or any of the funds in total, I'd be happy to answer them, but in my mind, everything is, where it should be at this point in time.
Okay. Questions on anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Bob, I'm just going to go through it page by page. Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the revenues. You have municipal court. It's at 51% of what we're anticipating for revenues. Do you think that's going to go higher?
Yes, I think based upon e-ticketing, which we just implemented, we've had a lot better result in collections and the timeliness of collections, so I think that's going to go higher.
Okay. Then what you've anticipated from a budgetary standpoint, so...
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good.
So whatever excess we have over what we anticipated, we get to move to next year as well.
Got it. Recreation fees and permits, I mean, you're at 50% approximately of that. I mean, is that from Graydon? Is that most of the money's coming from, or?
Which line, I'm sorry?
That's,
Yes.
it's 8001.
Yeah, those would be pre-sales at Graydon or recreation programs.
Okay. You anticipate that's going to go higher than what we have?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Depends on the weather.
Got it. The page 3, receipts from delinquent taxes, you've got that at 44% through 1/3 of the year, or a quarter of the year, right? Quarter
Through
of the year.
4 months.
4 months, got it. That's higher than what you've anticipated. You think that's going to go higher?
That'll probably be right around 750. I don't anticipate. We only have so much that we can collect on.
Page 9. You have the retirement systems, public employees' retirement systems, they're all paid up. Is that generally how it's done? I mean, so you don't anticipate
We get a
more?
bill early in the year, and we have to pay it.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Next page, page 10. Contributions to joint meeting for consolidated dispatch and E911, we're at 44%. Do you think that's going to go higher than what we're anticipating at 675,000?
No, I think that number is concrete. I think that's what we agreed upon when we started the year.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. A lot of the things seem like timing that are low. It's kind of usual when you go through these reports. Is there any specific area that we need to have any kind of special concern for, or everything seems to be A-okay?
No, I think we're on target. I think parking's a little bit low, but we're keeping an eye on that every month because obviously when you have change in rates and things of that nature, it's a matter of catching up and understanding what they are. So we'll keep an eye on that one, but other than that, I think we're in good shape.
Good, thank you.
Councilwoman Hache. Oh, Councilwoman Walsh.
I guess I just have one question on the water utility fund, the revenues, operating surplus anticipated, and then the rents. What is that rent number including? The budgeted rent number?
The $12.7 million?
Yeah.
That's everything that we bill out for the year.
Okay.
Last year, that number was roughly $14 million.
Okay.
And we chose to go on the lower side without, based on weather, that can change. So we took the conservative side and lowered this to the $12.7 million.
Okay. Yeah, because it's showing just $3.5 million. So that's a little low, I guess.
And again, that can be predicated on billing too. So when this was done in April 30th, there may have been a cycle that just came up in late April or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
No other questions? Okay, great.
Sorry, on page 11, there's just two items that seem relatively low to everything else. Loan repayments for principal and interest and total debt service as a percentage of actual budget, 5% and 712.
So that's based on maturity schedule. Our first payments are principal payments aren't due till June 1st. So you'll see that getting eaten up in the June 30th report. That'll be done.
Thank you.
I just had a question relative to the parking. How will that be monitored? How often and
I actually get cash reports weekly on the collections. So try to compare that to the prior months of prior years and see where there might be fluctuations. At the end of the month, I get a report every month that shows me where I am in relation to the past 2 years. So there's been a slight decline. That decline can be attributable to a couple of things. One is the use of Park Mobile, because we don't collect 100% on our Park Mobile. So as more people move towards using that, we have a reduction in revenue as a result. The second thing is anytime we have construction, public service, where the use of meters is blocked, that'll contribute to the decline in the revenue for that month. So I try to match up when we do have projects going on as to what I would anticipate being a loss of revenue because we don't have collections going on at those meters.
Okay, and so we know the number of meters that are bagged, and we kind of can track like along those lines?
Yes, we can. The bagged meter money stays separate. I try to compare just the revenue from the meters themselves. So even though the bag money is going to supplement my loss, it's not comparative.
No, I meant the meters that are not being used, non-active meters, the meters that are blocked off. Did I misstated that? The ones that you can't use, that are blocked, that are covered.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So if I have 20 meters that are down for the 2 weeks or a month, I would anticipate a loss of revenue for that section.
Right, okay.
So I try to take that into consideration.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, is there a way to correlate that to, from the CBD Advisory Committee, to correlate that to foot traffic downtown? Or is that something at some point we should look at, if there's some correlation to maybe less activity in the central business district? Or you're attributing it to like a PSE&G issue, you're attributing it to certain things, but it also could be attributable to a decline in foot traffic or a decline in activity. And I'm just, then you have a problem.
Correct.
Okay, so then it's a real problem.
Right, so in using Park Mobile, I can tell the number of transactions and I compare the number of transactions a day. For the cash collections, I can't tell.
Okay,
because people are in and out.
Right.
So I don't have any basis for that.
Okay, all right, good. All right, thank you.
Okay. Our next one, Bob, I'll just have you stay because you're probably for the next one, okay, after this. So on-call traffic engineering services proposal. We received proposals. There were 2 plan holders and 2 proposals. The RFP requested hourly rates. The proposals were received from Boswell Engineering and Petrie Traffic LLC. Both proposals were complete. As Chris reviewed them, he noted that Boswell presents significantly greater depths of experience than Petrie in both personnel and projects, but this is for the council to discuss and decide if you wish to have one or the other on call for things that we may want to do for traffic engineering in various parts of town.
Thank you. So this is different than what they do for the planning and zoning board, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So if we have like a special, like we're looking at the Wolseley or Garber Square parking area, they would look at that to see whether or not it's reasonable. Pommend or whatever, yeah?
Things like that.
Which one?
Wolseley, Garber Square, the parking area, that parking lot.
That's already been awarded.
Awarded for, we're doing it?
The study for the Pomander, Sherman.
Right.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the parking lot near the train station that we're still talking about right now. I mean, you had reconfigured it, and we just, if we had wanted to have somebody kind of look at it from another viewpoint, like a traffic expert, they would do something like this, right? They'd be on call. Okay, good, thank you.
Is there any charge for the on-call service, or we just pay as we use them?
It's the hourly rate as in the proposals, and as it applies to the services desired or requested by the village. There's no annual retainer. It's just that, if you have a project or something you want their opinion on, they will bill at the rates they presented. If the council does go in that direction for specific projects, I would strongly advise getting a budget with an upper limit on it, just so that finance can make sure that the adequate funding is in place for that service.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Walsh? No questions.
No questions.
So I'm looking at both, and I see that your point that Boswell has some other maybe stronger background in certain areas, and then I look at Petrie, and I know that John Jar has been our traffic engineer or traffic consultant for our Board of Adjustment and Planning Board for how many years between Mazer and now with this company. So what maybe is a difference in one strength that Boswell might bring to the table, what Petrie brings is a history and a knowledge of almost every little nook and cranny of the village. And so I don't know, I wonder if there's some overlap that's a benefit to going with Petrie based on he has a lot of data already that he has available to him.
There may be. On the other hand, I know that the former county engineer, after working for Bergen County for 40 years, is now with Boswell. He's a very knowledgeable traffic engineer. I've dealt with him numerous times when he was at the county in his capacity there. And he was very familiar with the village, partially because his wife used to work at Valley Hospital, if she still doesn't.
Okay. And they never submitted for the planning board, my recollection.
They have submitted to certain proposals here and there, but they haven't submitted on a consistent basis, if I recall.
Yeah, they haven't been that. Right, it's one of the first times I've seen a submission from them. Okay, all right. Anyone have an opinion as to who we would want to be interested in looking at?
I mean, I second your opinion on John Jar. I know he's done a really good job, to be honest with you, for both the planning and the zoning board, and we know him. So that might be that would be my guess. That would be my preference. So.
And just as an aside, if we needed if we needed the county to come in to help with something, we still have access to the county, so we still have expertise coming from the county. I mean, you were saying that this person was a county traffic engineer?
He was the county engineer, and the assistant county engineer were his last positions with Bergen County.
Okay. Right.
That's
right.
Gary Aspley.
He brings it to the table. All right. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I would be inclined to go with Petrie myself. Okay. Moving
So
on.
we're going with Petrie? Is that what we're doing?
I would think that.
Okay.
You know what? He has an insight into this whole thing.
Okay. The next one is the parking kiosk pilot study proposal. So the village received proposals for the parking kiosk 6-month pilot study at the Chestnut Street Municipal Parking Lot. There were 6 plan holders eligible to bid, and we received 3 proposals. The proposals quota range from $11,631 to $20,654.20. Mr. Rotishauser briefly reviewed them. Kale America with a quote of $20,654.20 was the most straightforward proposal received. There was no BRC, which is a business registration certificate in New Jersey. They propose a pay-by-plate system. Leasing a unit would be $918 a month, and to purchase it would be $9,590. Devo and Associates, their quote is $11,631. The vendor did not provide a price to lease a multi-space meter unit for the 6-month pilot. They provided a purchase price. A price to lease unit for 24 months was provided for $11,636.64, and they did submit a BRC. IPS Group, the vendor offers to lease the village a meter for $1,775 per month for the 6-month pilot program. The purchase of the meter would be $8,450. The vendor also has a 13-cent charge per transaction, and the vendor did submit a BRC. So, 3 proposals. You received all the proposals to review, and this is for your discussion.
Good.
Thank you. Chris, first, thanks for putting this together. I also wanted to thank Ray Shinazuka from the FAC I know he did some preliminary work on this and did a nice job kind of laying out what we were looking for. Couple of questions. I'm assuming that the Kale proposal is fully integrated with what we're doing right now with the traffic enforcement, parking enforcement. So that the software we have would integrate with what they have.
That would be the intent.
Do you know if we do or not?
I'd have to double check with them, but I can
Yeah,
do that.
and so just as a suggestion, I'm thinking maybe we should talk to Sergeant Chuck about this and make sure he's brought off on this.
We can do so.
Yeah. And then the other concern I had as it relates to this is just the maintenance, upkeep, and if things kind of need to be troubleshooted, how would that work so that we're not sitting there for a week with a down kiosk? I mean, did they appear? I mean, I wasn't really clear as to whether or not they would be accessible.
Again, that's something we can further clarify. I did request, I believe, in the proposal that training be given to our traffic and signal division. When we had a previous experience with a multi-space meter, they were the principal servicing group of the meter.
Okay, and we weren't terribly happy with that experience, right? I mean,
that's an understatement. A very big understatement.
Got it. All right. Yeah, so my concern would be is that I just would like to ensure that we have access to, even though they train us on how to kind of put things together or take things apart, that they also have their expertise available for us just in case there's any issues. That would be probably my biggest concern with this. And plus Sergeant Chuck, make sure he's okay.
Mm-hmm. So, I'll make those inquiries.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor?
Thank you. Chris, I noticed that IPS had, they made a special note that said 100% of the rental goes towards a purchase price if the pilot is successful and we want to continue. Does that include the other two responders to the bid? I mean, they would, or we don't know?
No. Again, each of the proposals presented a little bit different. They're not entirely an apples-to-apples comparison. The IPS, I believe, if you calculate the monthly rent, it comes out to what the cost of a meter is anyway.
Right.
So they kind of skewed their response or their bid rather than provide a true monthly rental and a separate true purchase price.
So the other ones, if we went with either of the other ones, we'd be paying rent, and we'd be paying the rent that they put in there, and then if it's successful and we wanted to buy them, then that money would not be credited towards us, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to know.
Councilman Walsh?
So, we talk a lot about citizen safety, about enforcement and reading the license plates and whatnot. So, I mean, it would make sense to have those systems integrated, but the Kale proposal seemed very vague. There was a lot of stuff in it that you couldn't really, the other one seemed more descriptive. I don't know if it was easier to read the other two. And then the IPS seemed like it was going to be the most expensive in the end. So the fact that they didn't have their business registration certificate, what is
BRC.
Yeah. So what would be? I mean, are they licensed in another state, or what would be the
we would need that to do any business with any vendor that does business with the Village of Ridgewood needs a New Jersey State business registration certificate. What it basically is, the document from Trenton that shows you pay taxes to Trenton.
But did they say they didn't have it, or
I didn't make that inquiry.
they just didn't put it in their proposal?
It just was not in the proposal.
So they may have it.
They may have it. We've had vendors who were very reluctant to get a BRC because of the tax implications. Yeah. So they may think that we're not going to provide one unless we have more of a guarantee of business.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Councilman Harshay?
Do we have any idea as to the units that are being proposed, any differences between the three, and have any of these units been implemented in other municipalities so we can get some feedback on how well they work and how effective they've been?
I know that there's a multi-space unit being used up by the Hoboken train station. I don't recall which flavor it is exactly. Each of the vendors has multiple locations where they're using their products. You just have to look up to see what's closest to the village if we want to take a look at it.
I'm assuming that each vendor's using a different kind, not necessarily, but they most likely would, right? Yeah.
Yeah, different unit.
But they all do the same thing. So in
Sorry?
other words, they all do the same thing. They all take cash,
Right,
credit
right.
cards, so that's consistent, but they use their own vendors for their machines.
There's also, if you look through it, there's different charges they have for software, for access. That's why I say it was not a apples-to-apples proposal. So initially, I would request that the council, if you want to go forward with this, pick one or two. If you have any questions on the features, we can investigate further, such as Deputy Mayor and Councilman Boyd had just asked.
So, yeah, I just needed more time to really go through this, because even right down to the machines, the visual effect of the machines is very different one to the next. And then you start to look at the functionality of each one and how they operate and then how they integrate and what kind of feedback and information you could get relative to usage, where, you know, your peak usage, I mean, the amount of information that you're generating through a computer system almost instantaneously, and then you could allow you to get even more in depth into the analytics. And so I think I still need more time to absorb all of this. It's a lot.
We can bring it back at
Yeah, I
June
think we should bring
28th,
it back.
and we'll talk to Sergeant Chuck also to see, and we'll look about integrating it with their present system, and so we can discuss it further then. So in the meantime, I guess if you have any questions that you want answered, we could go back to the vendors, so let me know, and then we'll do that.
Yeah, I would like to know if any have like videos of, you know, like just videos that we see how it operates. I think that's really helpful. Just in terms of when you see something, you recognize whether or not it seems more user-friendly, whether it seems cumbersome, and I think that would probably be helpful.
We can ask.
Yeah, and Chris, would you be able to talk to at least a couple of their references to make sure that, you know, some things like maintenance, you know, they're good at, or they just...
We can do that.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Just one last question. When this kiosk is, I guess this is bolted into cement, is that how that works?
Yes, it has to be securely fastened to the concrete so it doesn't grow legs.
Right.
That happens, unfortunately.
All right, great. Okay, thank you.
Nice way to put it.
Okay. The next item is a Board of State contract for furniture for Village Hall. The furniture in the lunchroom consists of 10 chairs, 4 tables, and a sofa, and it's in dire need of replacement. It actually came from the original Village Hall before the renovation, and so it has worn fabric, there are stains, some of the chairs are broken, and so we'd like to replace that. Bob and I have worked with a vendor registered with the Middlesex County Cooperative Purchasing System, and recently this vendor brought new furniture to our building department a couple of years ago. So the prices were reasonable, and the people in the building department are very satisfied with it. So this is to move forward under this cooperative purchasing agreement in an amount not to exceed $15,000.
Questions or comments?
Okay.
Go on.
The next one is policy, and this is boards and committees.
Okay. So I'll take it from there. All right, so the reason I asked to have this back on the agenda is, you know, I was thinking over the past few weeks about our different boards and committees and how fortunate we are to have so many volunteers that give of their time and their talents for the village. But as with any program, board, or committee, there comes a time when you have to have a periodic review and determine whether or not they're still necessary, and whether or not they should continue or be revamped and rethought through. So when I actually had an opportunity to speak to a couple of members of the Financial Advisory Committee over the past few weeks, and one of the things in talking to them was whether or not something like the Financial Advisory Committee, when it was formed, we didn't have a CFO. And so I think some of the concerns that they expressed are seemingly real, but not so real because at the time we just simply didn't have a CFO, and that's when the Tiger team came up and the FAC. So I had a thought that after speaking to a couple of members that maybe it would be a benefit to create an FAC, almost like an ad hoc committee, so that they have an opportunity to do special analysis of areas that we would like to have more in-depth information, and better use of their talents and energies. Also, the Community Relations Advisory Board was another one. When the Community Relations Advisory Board was formed, it was based on really a horrific act of bias and hatred right here in Ridgewood. But it seems that maybe that's another group that could be revisited and done. Just restructure the membership. Right now it's just whoever comes is, we appoint anyone and everyone, and thinking that maybe we should be, again, maybe more of an ad hoc committee, and the membership, especially when it comes to more sensitive personal matters that occur, that the people that are on that committee have maybe that type of training specifically, so it doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. And then I had one more was an ad hoc committee for the Shedler, I want to call it Zabriskie Shedler property, because thinking back to the Graydon ad hoc committee, and this is kind of where I based all of this on, was that I thought the Graydon ad hoc committee was one of the best committees, short-term, laser-focused on one issue, and it was so productive and so incredible. And what did we get out of it? We have a really clean super scrubbed facility. The playground is sparkling. The restrooms were kind of cleaned up and painted and tweaked, and the plumbing and everything, things that really were focused on by end users. And so that made for a really productive and positive outcome. So I'm just looking for some feedback on the Shedler property. I know, maybe we can really effectively use resources, our resources, and talents, again, of individuals within the community to come up with a plan to use a property that's really just sitting dormant, and that we should at least use it and have some kind of a plan. So, thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. I'd be in favor of doing that.
Which?
Ad hoc committee for the FAC, restructure CRAB, and have an ad hoc committee for the Zabriskie Shedler House.
Anyone else?
So I think that the task of the boards and committees and the bylaws, we're still working on citizen safety, and the challenge for us, and I was thinking about it tonight when we were talking about notifying the neighbors, that was one of the things that we were trying to figure out, is that our job? Whose job is it? Because we didn't want to be the ones to notify, not do it properly or legally, and then get in trouble. You know what I mean? So I think we have a good start with how we're changing the structures or changing the bylaws. I'm just not sure, and I think we should, I guess, get the input from the people on these different committees as to what would be more effective. I know that the couple of things that we have been tweaking, like the green team that Mike's been working, there's such a benefit by grant monies and things like that. So I think the focus has to be how they're going to best serve us. I don't think we're going to be able to do it that quickly.
Right.
And I think, just working with my stuff on citizen safety and Arts Council, again, are we overreaching, or how to, so we're actually still working on what our processes are. So I was assuming everybody was doing the same.
Oh, yeah, everyone is doing the same. Councilman Hache?
I think the challenge would be to find the balance, because even within some of the what should be more permanent committees, I think there's opportunities to carve out specific sort of subcommittees or ad hoc committees to work on certain things. So PRC is one of them, for example. PRC obviously looks at a much broader sort of spectrum of issues around town related to our facilities. But the grading thing was very punctual. It was sort of, let's get kind of moving the needle on things that we can do very quickly, that are not going to cost us a lot of money, and taking in that feedback from the end user, I think was very valuable. And I think, you know, the things that you mentioned that happened, but I think what we're also going to be proud of is just how much we increased sort of the buy-in into grading. And if you look at the early purchases of the season passes, was almost triple what it was, you know, a year before. So I think that there's value in carving out subcommittees from within. You know, I like the fact that we've been looking at all of the committees just in terms of relevance, usefulness. You know, regarding the FAC, I think it's important for us to sit down with our CFO and really figure out what would be most valuable in terms of the input from any committee, whether ad hoc or permanent, in terms of how he can best, you know, leverage this collective talent. I think that's a good approach because for us, a lot of times, we may have something in mind. I think we may have certain issues that we want to sort of attack, and they can be very specific to each council member. But I think, you know, more broadly speaking, if I'm a CFO and I don't have this massive department of folks that I have at my disposal, and if I could have access to some talented, you know, individuals who are willing to volunteer their time and expertise, what would I need to extract in terms of best and highest use from those individuals as a committee? I think you know, maybe we can sit down with our CFO and figure out what that is. And who knows? Might be a very long list, might be a very short list. But I think then we can gauge, sort of from there, what will be the best use of that. And
yeah, Councilman Hache, I tend to agree with you. I think it's a good idea for us to kind of revisit a committee like the FAC. And I know we had a meeting the other day, and the really nice thing about the people on this committee, not only that they're talented, is they had a real desire to want to provide a service to the community and to the village. And I know that they're reaching out to a number of the council people just to find that out as to what that service is, because they want to make sure that whatever they provide is going to be of use and used. So I'm more inclined to kind of, let's step back a little bit. Let's take a look at what's important for the village and whether or not, you know, maybe we do need it, maybe we don't. But just understand that a little bit better before we decide to kind of axe some of these committees. On the CRAB committee, you know, I find it is a very useful committee I think for the village, and some of the things they come up with I think are really very relevant as it relates to looking at diversity, relates to some of the things that came up with, you know, with what happened recently with our flag, the gay pride flag, and so, you know, I think those things provide very useful input. So I'm in favor of keeping, frankly, I'm in favor of keeping CRAB. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not saying to dissolve, but to revamp and create more of an ad hoc system where people are actually appointed and those same people are on call to address issues when they come up, but not, you know, we had a lot of communications. Actually, it's a good thing that I'm kind of glad you brought it up. There were a great many communications during those couple of weeks, and some of the communications actually wreaked some havoc, and there were miscommunications and some misinformation, and so I think that kind of dialing it back a little and kind of regrouping and tightening things up a little would probably be a benefit to this council and to the committees, actually. I think that the committees would probably appreciate a little bit more structure to their programs. So just going back to the Shedler-Zabriskie ad hoc. So again, and going back to Graydon, I think that, I mean, the Graydon ad hoc committee, there's no doubt, was just fabulous. I mean, I don't think we could have ever anticipated such an outstanding result, and that's really what I'm basing this on, is that it was really results-oriented and was a thoughtful, balanced approach to how they attack these issues.
Yeah, I think if you can correlate the Graydon approach to Shedler-Zabriskie, I think it would make sense. The challenge that you have in Shedler-Zabriskie is there are a lot of different stakeholders, and I think it's pretty broadly spread out throughout the village. It's going to take a lot of time. I mean, it'll take, I think, years to get all this collective feedback and have dialogue if it's being driven out of a committee that meets once a month in the village. And you throw in the summer months when nobody's around, you don't have a quorum, it gets even worse. So I think taking the approach of, getting this committee ad hoc made up of the different constituents that should be weighing on this. And again, it's not a policy setting committee, it's advisory. That would have, there would be interaction with PRC, with the village. But I think for us to speed up the process and because these committees, I mean, Graydon, we would meet sometimes 3 times a week. And it was quick, and if you were there, you fine. If not, somebody would send you the minutes of the meeting. And it was very fast, it was very active. The people were incredibly engaged, but we felt that we had sort of a window of opportunity to kind of get something done. We weren't dragging this out, and maybe next month we meet or so on. So I think that, taking that approach with Shedler-Zabriskie, I think would be quite successful.
And just one more note on the for Crab. I just wanted to point out there was an indication that Ridgewood would be soon, and this was the opportunity there, soon be exclusive to Crab. So it would no longer be Glen Rock Ridgewood. And I think that was important in all of this because this was the opportunity to then rethink and restructure. Okay, all right. So moving on.
Okay, so what is it that we're going to do right now? Just so I know.
Well, I mean, I think that, as Councilman Voigt pointed out, the Financial Advisory Committee members are reaching out to different council members to determine how they can best serve. And so and I indicated that I did speak with a couple of them, and they thought that having an ad hoc approach was much better. So it's not like a regular meeting. It's when you need a special project or analysis done.
Right.
They seem to be in favor, but I'm fine with everybody kind of
So my question is, are we going to appoint an ad hoc by resolution, or are we just going to say, you're on this project?
Well, I think we would do like an ad hoc committee, like I want to call it an on-call ad hoc committee. Okay. So when there's a special project, this is your ad hoc team, if that makes sense to everyone.
So you want to appoint certain people to it?
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, our current FAC has terms that expire at the end of this month.
Right.
So, I don't know how you're going to have to discuss it a little more to figure out how you want to reconstitute it and who you want to keep on and who you want to maybe not, and so.
Right, so I think what we would do is just put it on hold right now until the FAC members that want to reach out for different council members, and maybe they'll give the same feedback, or maybe they'll come up with other ideas of how to reconstitute and move forward. For the Community Relations Advisory Board, I definitely would like to have no longer open membership. I would like to see a more structured appointment system on that. That's something I would definitely want to do. And that, if everybody would be in agreement with, I would like to start that process.
Is that the only committee, I believe, that's sort of open?
No, the Arts Council, Arts Council is also open. But it's interesting, though, I think we had that conversation also, the same thing, because what happens is you have all these people listed that are members, but only a handful show up, and that handful is doing, the carrying the load of it.
80-20.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to kind of structure it and kind of, rethink it and revamp it. So that I would like to do. So I could put that together for next week.
Oh,
so can we?
Well, it's actually the 28th. It's the end of the month.
Right.
Is our work session, not next week. Unless you want to do the makeup of the committee as a resolution next week. to create the new crab. I mean, you have to discuss it though, so.
Right, so we'll wait until the 28th, that's
28th,
fine.
and then we'll, okay,
good.
so.
That's
okay.
fine, no
Can we,
rush.
for the time being, separate, because I think Shedler Zabriskie being something that doesn't exist today, I think the other ones exist, and we're thinking about how to thoroughly
Correct.
constitute. Can we separate the two and kind of see if we can move forward with?
Do that by
Yeah, so
resolution.
on the ad hoc committee, actually, because we'd already spoken about this and kind of had a little discussion with Heather about it, only primarily because the property is just sitting there and it's just not even being used, which is, you know, it's been that way since 2008, I think, or 2009.
And when it was bought, it was
Yeah,
said that it was
a long
going to
time
sit there.
just not even use a
so.
park that you know, you own the property. So why don't we put together your list and,
Okay.
you know, however it's been kind of refined down, and we'll proceed from there by resolution.
Okay, so do a resolution for that,
good.
okay.
Perfect. Did we do grade and ad hoc by resolution, or did we just,
I don't
we
think
don't have to
I
do
don't
ad
think we
hoc by
did.
resolution?
I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to, you could. But I think,
We
right,
don't have to, right. Okay, so why don't we don't have to do that, that's fine. We'll just kind of call everybody and see who's, you know, of that group that you were talking about,
okay,
and we'll go from there.
okay.
All right, good.
So the next subject is the train station parking lot and Garber Square bike lane. So I'm going to have Chris Redeshauser come up again, and we'll discuss this subject.
You don't want to just stay, right? You don't want to just stay right there?
It's in the front row.
So the reason this was on the agenda was because I had a couple of residents, as the train station issue came up, and we started to talk about parking spaces, adding parking spaces. The inevitable rearing its ugly head was the green lane, the green bicycle lane. And so there were a number of folks who would like to see that go back to being 2 lanes, and I know that you and I had a conversation about it, and we spoke about, instead of having a green bike lane, maybe doing the 2 lanes and sharrows, which anybody who doesn't, sharrows, S-H-A, sharrows is, it's like an arrow, so you share the road. I see Pam needs a sharrow. Is that, do I have it right? A sharrow?
It is correctly called a shower.
Sharrow, right. So I just wanted to kind of get your feedback on that and how we could approach that and see if there was any interest in changing that up from council.
Well, it's also putting 2 lanes through Garber Square, even in the configuration it was before we resurfaced, is not physically possible. There's not enough room. One of the reasons is the New Jersey Transit bus. When they make a 90-degree turn, they need a 21-foot wide lane. We don't have that kind of room there. When we did look at, when we started the design process for the project that is out there now, we did look at a number of accident reports where cars get pinched in that corner, where people thought there were 2 lanes in the bend when there really isn't 2 lanes. The other thing that's also bears keeping in mind is, if I recall correctly, there's no village roads with 2 lanes of traffic in the same direction other than as they approach an intersection. An example is Hudson Street as it approaches South Broad. It splits into 2 lanes to have a dedicated left and right turn.
Right.
On Garber Square heading westbound, you do split at West Ridgewood for the through lane left and for the right lane. As you come east underneath the tracks, you have a split at North Broad to go straight or make a right turn. Those are the only instances where we have 2 lanes in the direction of traffic. And I touched base briefly with Chief Lutke this evening, and she can't recall either any other streets under village control that have 2 lanes in a direction of traffic. If we were to have something like that, we would need a number of ordinances and revisions to our Chapter 265 on vehicles and traffic.
But it was 2 lanes before?
Only for bad drivers.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Only for bad drivers.
Chris, how wide is that road?
In the pre-construction configuration at the 90-degree bend, we had 23.8 feet and 31.6 feet. Of that, we need at least 21 feet for the bus according to their turning template that New Jersey Transit has provided us. We had another example of this on Friday morning at about 9:30. A Frito-Lay truck approached a trestle and decided, oops, they were too tall. So they, police department responded. They had to move the truck off to one side, and a transit bus could not get past it. And this was right in the bend as it approaches the trestle. So they had to do a lot of maneuvering, turn the chip truck, Frito-Lay truck around at the crossover reconstructed, so they could go back and find a different route to go eastward.
So you're saying that if there were 2 lanes there and somebody had the unfortunate luck of driving next to a bus and the bus happened to turn, they'd probably hit the bus?
They generally would get pinched, and there have been accidents like that. Because the buses, like I mentioned, according to the turning template, on a 90-degree turn, the MCI-45 bus the transit uses needs a width of 21 feet.
So would the pinching happen if the bus is going under, would it happen on the right side of the bus, on the driver's side, or on the door side?
It depends which direction are you...
So if you're going away from Garber towards Franklin...
So you're coming from West Ridgewood Avenue to, say, Broad Street.
Right.
If the bus was there and somebody decided to pass inside on the right, they would get pinched. The bus drivers have to make a wide enough swing. We currently see that maneuver of the traffic as they go through, and you can also see that in some of the wear patterns on the green bike lanes.
So can we mandate the buses have to travel on the right lane? That way they don't pinch anybody onto the right?
Which right lane? There's only one lane.
No,
there
could
only be one
lanes.
lane.
If there were 2 lanes of traffic,
No, they could...
can we ask the bus to go on the right? To go underneath?
Do you have the radius diagram? I think that's helpful. It's helpful when you see the radius. Here's the wheel. This is... Okay, so here, that's what you need. So he needs that width.
Oh. Got it.
So I think my question is, prior to the, before the work happened underneath the trestle, there was that very thin median, all right? It was kind of a thinner, more...
It was slightly thinner than what we put in, because we also installed the decorative street lights to create better illumination.
So my question is, when it was that more narrow piece in the middle, the buses then did fit? There was enough space to do that?
The buses fit, again, but not 2 lanes of traffic.
And then when we had the wider piece in the middle, that was actually, remember, I want to think it was 2014. The 2014 time it was a wider median, and then it was removed and reconstructed to the more narrow one that it is today. Is that, or maybe I'm misremembering?
That is correct.
I'm misremembering, or that it was wider and then it was more narrow?
No,
Correct.
we initially started with a wider median, and then I was directed to make it a little bit narrower
And
to create a little more room at the West Ridgewood Avenue intersection.
And the reason that it was made to that we spent that money to reduce it was because at the time it was stated that we would always be able to then go back to 2 lanes, or am I wrong? Or am I, maybe I'm misremembering. Not that you didn't say it, but I mean, it was represented.
There was intent or thought by some that you could put 2 lanes on the straight section in front of Garber Square, in front of the Pease Library.
Okay.
However, you're not going to be able to fit that in the 90-degree bend.
Okay, in the bend, that's
Yes.
the place, okay. All right.
I know the police department is working on getting metrics again for those lights to see how long it does take to get through the lights, because I know people residents are concerned with the amount of time it takes to get through the lights. I've spoken to the chief, and she basically indicated that, yes, it's going to back up in the morning during rush hour, and it's going to back up in the evening during rush hour, and possibly a little bit at lunchtime. But she said other than that, what she has observed and what her police officers have observed is it doesn't back up that much, other than those rush hour times. But again, we are in the process of getting either cameras or some way of counting so we can get actual metrics, so we can show you, how many times it might take to clear a light. So this way you'd have better data, at least, to make a decision as to what we're going to do. If you really are going to do away with that lane, I think we need to discuss it and really base it on facts instead of desires, of residents. Not that that doesn't matter, it does, but I think that the data will help.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, and I always think that it also goes back to that end user experience that we talk about all too often, is whether or not that obviously that data would support one experience or the other, or maybe it's a variety of different things that are occurring there at different times. So, okay, all right, we'll revisit it later.
The other thing that also bears keeping in mind is the light at West Ridgewood Avenue and the light at North Broad. Both are on timers. They don't have any actuators that can sense additional traffic volume from one direction over another one and adjust the signal cycle.
So, I mean, this is something we talk a lot about at Planning Board, and it almost becomes critical to have that to keep the flow of traffic moving. Actuators and sensors help tremendously in giving additional green time to the traffic flow direction that needs it more. Right. We don't have that, as I said, in those lights. We don't have that in the great majority of our lights. Right.
Okay. All right, so we'll discuss that further when we have some more information.
Okay, great, thank you.
The next item is amendment to the power tools, landscaping and yard maintenance equipment. As most people know, commercial use of power tools, landscaping and yard maintenance equipment, and motorized construction equipment is only permitted during certain hours, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 6 p.m., Saturday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., and no operation on Sundays. This is commercial use, so if a resident wants to use power tools themselves, they can certainly do that at any time. It also indicates that this ordinance shall not apply to power machinery used for ice and snow removal. This was because of the fact that obviously there are some professional plow companies, paid plow companies that come in, clear driveways or clear sidewalks for residents, and if there's a blizzard, they get out there, sometimes early in the morning to remove snow and ice, and that's why that was exempted at the time it was adopted. So this is up for discussion as well.
Right. So this was the result of a couple of complaints, and one in particular that just kind of, again, brought it to mind again, that on a holiday, a resident, most recently a resident emailed, and I think everyone was copied on the email, and I guess she was home resting. It was a holiday, and not anticipating that a commercial landscaping business would start up their machinery at so early in the morning. And so I think everybody was copied on it, and I said, you know what, I've been meaning to address this anyway, because there have been other complaints about it as well, so why don't we just put it on the agenda and take a look at it. So the question is whether or not we would want to take holidays and make it the equivalent of a Sunday, and have holidays prohibit, such operation would be prohibited on holidays, and then list out the holidays. I don't know if anybody thinks, maybe that's not a good idea. I'm open to, it's up for discussion. And I think the other issue was whether or not snow removal on a non-state of emergency, where it should be occurring at 4 o'clock in the morning in residential areas, whether or not it's reasonable to say that snow removal in a non-emergency situation, it's reasonable to say that should be happening maybe later into the evening and earlier in the morning, but certainly not 3 or 4 a.m. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know where you would go with holidays. Would it just be federal holidays, or then do you have to pick through from federal holidays and non-federal holidays? Because, you know, you want to kind of decide, pick and choose, and is it all holidays? Because there's a lot of holidays. I mean, I don't know, that I could see as potentially being a bit of a sticky situation. Non-emergency snow removal could probably start a little bit later.
So what if we said the federal holidays, that we wouldn't do, you couldn't do that, so Memorial Day, 4th of July, so go, like Labor Day, so that would, those days, we would only use those specific holidays that, would that make sense?
Are you not going to permit it at all, or are you going to do it later in the day?
I'm thinking treat it like a Sunday. I mean, because remember, it's commercial.
It's commercial, yeah.
It's not like if somebody wants to go mow their lawn, they can. This is for
Commercial.
right, commercial.
It is, correct.
And I think it just is a quality of life issue because, you know, some people work all week long and then they have this one day off and at 7 a.m. they're
The leaf blower alarm clock.
yeah. So do we want to just make that all federal holidays? Does that make sense?
I agree with that.
And we'll make it so not permitted on federal holidays.
And we'll list them because, you know, some people don't know if it's a federal
Right.
holiday or not, so.
Right. I
So
think that's
everyone's in
another way to
agreement
do
with
it.
that?
Right. And then
Okay.
on snow removal,
Snow removal is a tough one.
well,
That's tough.
I think you ought to have a discussion with the staff, the snow removal staff, just to
Yeah.
find out if that's going to cause an impediment to the way that they do it, depending upon when the snowstorm happens.
but village staff is,
Maybe that already happened, so.
no, but village is not, we're exempt.
No, I'm talking, somebody brought up snow removal.
Yeah, but we're talking about commercial snow removal.
Yeah, but there are issues with regard to that, and depending upon how it interplays with what they do. So I just think the conversation should take place. I was going to recommend that.
All right, okay. So that's fine. So we'll just start at least with the holidays and the commercial, and then we'll maybe discuss with with our staff how the commercial use of snow, I mean, just to make it a little bit, if it's a problem, just making it, you know, from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m., not after 11, between 11 and you know, whatever.
6 is late, though. Someone has to get a train. If they're still going, or a bus, they're still going into New York City, let's say.
Right, if the snow's falling, I guess snow could fall at 2 a.m. and... Yeah,
I'm not saying 3 or 4, maybe, you know, maybe give 5 or something, but,
Right.
you know, if someone needs to get their driveway plowed so they can get to a bus or to a train,
Right.
it might be tough.
Yeah, snow I could see being tough because, you know, snowstorms aren't scheduled.
Yeah.
They happen. and
Unfortunately,
they start out
no.
light and they get heavy, or maybe they start out heavy and get light.
Okay,
and it's-
so maybe we have to
it's
talk to staff on the snow removal one, but we'll just
Okay.
go start with the federal holidays for the,
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do that amendment for next week.
great.
Okay. So the next one is an update on the estate card. Again, this is the card that is a debit card that would be an option for residents to participate in this program, where our local merchants and restaurants can participate, and they can offer percentages, and they can vary the percentages. So let's say it's during the holidays, and they'll say 20% of your total purchase will go towards the estate card. You'd use the estate card, it's a debit card, as I say, to pay for it, and then that 20% would add up to points. Those points at the end of the year would then reduce the resident's tax by that amount, property tax. So we are in the process. I know that Matt and I and Bob all reviewed it, and Steve Sanzari, our treasurer, and we're also going to meet with the CEO of Estate Cards tomorrow and possibly get some of our questions answered that we have, and also we had some concerns with certain statements within the agreement. So if we can get that all worked out tomorrow, which I don't know that we can, we may be able to move forward with our resolution next week. If not, we'll continue to have the conversation with the estate cards, or they may say, well, we can't accommodate that, and then we'd have to decide whether or not, you know, we still want to proceed. Again, it's an option for both our merchants and also for our residents. It's an opportunity for our merchants to attract our residents to eat or shop in the Central Business District. And in addition, there are some online vendors that the residents can use as well to get additional points to then put towards their property tax reduction. So it's optional on all ends, and if we can work through the issues and concerns we have with the agreement, it's probably a good opportunity to move forward. I know Councilman Hache also has been working on this, so.
Yeah, I mean, we met with the Guild, Chamber of Commerce, and the CEO of the company. And, a lot of good questions came up during the discussion, but, and some of the questions centered around, well, if we're retailers and we're already, having fierce competition from online retailers, why offer shoppers another avenue to shop online and not in town? And I think that's the beauty of the card. No matter where you use it, you always get sort of that base reward. So it works like a rewards card, which is a very small percentage. I think it's 0.025, something like that. Then the discount you would get from the retailers is adjusted by that retailer. The participants that do this online, the discounts tend to be very low. These tend to be the bigger sort of retailers. They're not trying to encourage people to come in through the door. It's more of the standard kind of discounts. The beauty of it is that it would encourage shopping local, because when you're, and this is why it's important to have the buy-in from the chamber and from the guild to work with the local merchants in terms of coming up with, we can come up with either seasonal type of discounts, but it's so adjustable, it's so flexible that you can do it, I mean, day to day if you wanted to. Another beauty is that residents of Ridgewood that will be participating would have access to the website that's created just for Ridgewood. So when you log on, you would have all these sort of advertising, all the promotions from Ridgewood, participating Ridgewood businesses only. If you're doing it in Glen Rock, you would have sort of the Glen Rock page. So it allows businesses now then to have an expanded platform to be able to market discounts, promotions, without having to invest in a website on their own. They're working, and I met with the CEO afterwards and we talked, and they're working on giving retailers the option of kind of boosting promotions, kind of like you can do on Facebook, where you can go out with a targeted sort of promotion and reach your consumers, electronically, email, or so again, giving, I think, our retailers a better shot at competing with the online guys by, number one, driving traffic to the stores locally, but also giving them an electronic platform to be able to promote their business a little bit better. So I think it's wonderful. What I'm trying to figure out from us, though, is that we're just the resolution is to be able to accept payment through this method, because it's almost like saying, because this to me is just another bank. It's an online bank as opposed to a physical brick and mortar like a Bank of America. So are we voting on just being able to accept the payments through that venue? Or?
It's allowing us to sign an agreement with the estate card to provide the service, and then each individual resident and merchant and restaurant would make a decision as to whether or not he or she wanted to participate. So that's what it would allow.
Just so you know, there's one agreement that we would have with the state
Microphone?
card. I'm sorry. There's one agreement that we'd have with the state card. The card holder are the participants. The residents who decided to participate would have a separate agreement, as they might with a credit card company. So it works separately. Although one of the things we intend on doing is, looking at the cardholder agreement to make sure that we're not setting the residents up into something that they shouldn't really get into. So that's what we want to make sure of.
Is that agreement with the village because it's a dedicated system to those, to apply those dollars to their taxes? So they can't just take that money, like I couldn't go out and shop and then take that money and convert it to a check. It's absolutely dedicated, and that's what the agreement then
property
is.
tax reduction.
Okay.
That's the purpose of it.
Okay.
The only time that there could be adjustments to that and is, for example, if you sell a property, and typically what you get back, and when you're at the closing, when you have seller credits and debits, any taxes that would have been prepaid or anything that would have accrued to that card, you can make the adjustment at the closing.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, it's still all related to property taxes.
Right.
Right.
And just one more question. Who maintains the website?
They do.
They do.
Oh, they do? Okay. All right. Great.
So, as I said, either we'll come to some sort of agreement tomorrow, or if we don't, and we will continue to discuss it with them, and if so, we'll bring it back to you in the future, if that's the case. The next item is the Clinton Avenue ordinance. As Ms. Remus mentioned, we are going to full-day kindergarten come September, and so at the last, I know Councilwoman Walsh said at the last citizen safety meeting, it was discussed that we would possibly introduce a new ordinance opening Clinton Avenue during the day. The superintendent of schools actually sent me a email indicating that he had spoken to the Ridge School principal, and the principal had indicated closure from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And other than that, it could be open. You know, basically the drop-off and pick-up times. So that's the information I have. I know I got a email also from Chris Redeshauser, who had a conversation with Sergeant J. Chuck, and he came up with another solution, which maybe we could discuss. And go ahead.
Yeah, the issue on Clinton Avenue in relationship to Ridge School is a topic I've discussed with Sergeant Chuck, and earlier this evening I had a conversation with Chief Lutke on it. One of the ideas, again, for the council's consideration is consider making Clinton Avenue one-way from West Ridgewood Avenue down to Godwin during school days. It is the same thing that we do at Bogart by Travell and California by Willard.
They would be traveling south?
They'd be traveling south away from the school. In conjunction with that, depending how that worked out, Chief and I discussed what other options could do. There could be a marked pedestrian walk area. There could be parking on one side of the street, because we know there's a parking issue up at Ridge School. I had a resident come see me just the other day because she was hit by one of the parents waiting in the queue as she made a turn onto North Murray. So there's issues such as that. There's a lot of options, again, for the council to consider with now this change to full-day kindergarten.
If Clinton were traveling one way south, then is there another sister street that travels the opposite way north? Is that something?
South Murray would be the next street over that's fully in the village. That's two ways. It's one way each direction. The next street to the west is Maltby. Right, we own half of it, Midland Park the other half. That's also going to be one way in each direction.
Make our side one way. No.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
I know, this came up through CSAC. I've spoken to residents on South Mary and Clinton, and it's amazing because they've devised different ways to kind of help. It's all focused on the safety of the kids getting to and from, and obviously some of it has to deal with speed calming and traffic calming measures. But I think it would be important to get these folks to sit down and kind of provide feedback on what disruption this would have on sort of the daily lives, what the flow is. I'm personally not very familiar with how each one operates and how people sort of move in and out, but I think it will be important to get some feedback from the residents on both of those streets and see what potential impact this would have on their lives.
Currently, Clinton is closed during school hours. The council did amend the ordinance to allow service providers to come to those homes, sure, but there's no through traffic intended. If the council decided to make it one way, there would be a more steady flow of traffic through there. Service providers would just have to maybe go around the block on Maltby or on South Murray to get to West Ridgewood Avenue and then go down Clinton.
Yeah, I think either way, either whether we keep it as two-way or one-way, I think it's important to get the input from those folks on how that would impact them.
Yeah, Councilman Hache, I would agree with that. I mean, you have a very active group of people on Clinton and Murray. I mean, I'm sure they can give you some good insights as to what's going on and probably help us immensely as well.
So maybe we can do, I mean, I always have a concern going one direction on Clinton and the opposite on Murray, and that's the only reason I South Murray. And the reason I do is because, I know this will sound a little picayune, but I don't like to make left-hand turns onto busy roads, so I always go around an extra block. And there are actually a lot of people who don't like to make left turns.
You're not unusual at all.
No, I know. And so for somebody who has that kind of thing, not wanting to make a left turn, if you have to head south on Godwin, then in order to head east, you have to make that left turn into what is oftentimes busy. So I think that maybe sending a similar letter that we're sending to Stylen to those folks on Clinton and South Murray and just kind of get their input. But again, I would do it kind of like options, like rather than yes or no, these are some of the options and get the feedback based on that.
Again, like I mentioned, the two streets we already have this, where the precedence has been set, Bogart and California, it's only during school hours that they are one-way.
Right.
During non-school hours, they revert fully to two-way traffic.
And just one more time, that when you said that creating a pedestrian, like a pathway, just explain that to me again.
Like a bike lane. Like a bike lane.
Well,
You know, like
a pedestrian lane. Let's call it a pedestrian lane.
Like on Grove.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, like on Grove.
A white stripe on the edge of the road.
So it's not a Sharrow, whatever we call it?
Figure out a name for it.
Chevron.
And that would be on, you're suggesting that for Clinton?
That's another option that I've discussed with the police department. Again, that would be perhaps in conjunction with permitting parking on one side of the street and having that on the other side of the street to direct the children walking to that side of the street.
Okay. All right. So maybe we could get some input also from Janie Remus. So from, is that the Red Zone Committee? Is that whatever the school?
Yeah, there's the red zone.
Right.
We also, Sergeant Chuck and the Traffic Bureau did prepare an extensive study last year on the Ridge School area.
But other than that, I think we're good to go with the opening like that.
Yeah, I mean, CSAC, when we discussed it, it was basically just changing the times that the road would be closed. There was really no other discussion. So I guess those were suggestions that were made after, so.
Again, myself, Sergeant Chuck, we meet up, we discuss traffic. That's our common task for the village. And tonight, Chief Lucky called me up because she couldn't make it to tonight's meeting.
I mean, I guess South Murray is open all during the day, and it's got two-way traffic, doesn't have a line or anything, so I would imagine it would be the same. But South Murray doesn't have parking, right?
I don't believe they have parking.
They don't have parking, so if you were to open it and put parking on one side, that would be the difference.
Right.
Right, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll send out those letters and get the feedback from the residents and bring back the results.
Well, would the council still like to go with just the ordinance on
The time.
closure during the morning inflow and the afternoon outflow from school? Because with the 60-day time frame that an ordinance takes, we're running out of time to have that implemented for the December start.
Yep, okay.
Okay, so we're just going to go with the times. Okay. All right, the next item is the Historic Preservation Grant Proposal through Bergen County Open Space. It requires that a public hearing be held to hear public comment prior to the submission of the grant application. As you know, the Village Council approved the submission of a grant application for the Zabriskie Shedler House Restoration Phase 2 for grant funding of the interior operating systems, new windows and doors, and listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The public hearing has been scheduled for next week. during the public meeting. So anyone who's interested, in support of, or possibly not in favor of this application should be at this meeting to have their comments heard and recorded in the minutes. Okay? The next one is the FOP Awareness Initiative. FOP stands for Fibrodysplasia Ossificans Progressiva Awareness Initiative. Sorry about that. Very long, and that's why they call it FOP. Basically, the body makes additional bones in locations where bones should not form, such as muscles, tendons, ligaments. It creates a second skeleton for the person, and it immobilizes the joints of the body. It most often hits people anywhere in their first or second decade of life. So a lot of children are affected by this. Also, there are only 12 diagnosed cases in New Jersey and 200 nationwide. So this gentleman, Gary White, has been going town to town in Bergen County and various counties to try to get recognition of this disease, and also to urge councils to then urge the medical community to research treatment and a cure for this rare disease. So I know Councilman Seaton asked for this to be put on. I don't know if you spoke with Mr. White or corresponded with him, but...
Yeah, there was just a couple emails, but he was periodically, for the past few years, he's been emailing us, so I finally responded back. I said, well, we'll put this on an agenda, and I'm glad you said it, because I was trying to practice to say it, and it was going to be the most difficult thing I had to do all evening. So, FOP awareness.
Yeah. So if the council's in favor, we can do a resolution.
Sure.
Is that fine?
Absolutely.
Okay. Next one is we met with the Board of Education, and they asked that the council consider adopting an ordinance which will allow the Board of Education to bring any school-age children that they find are illegally enrolled in the schools because they don't actually reside in Ridgewood. It could be brought to the municipal court where the Board of Education could recover tuition and investigative fees, and it's possible the village may also be able to collect a fine. I know that Matt Rogers has looked into it with the Board of Education attorney, and also I've discussed it with Maria Dorr, our municipal court administrator, and I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I think just so you understand this, there is already a law that precludes this. The difference is that in order to enforce it, the enforcement goes through the State Board of Education down in Newark. So to a certain extent, there is a time and convenience issue for any school board to try and enforce this and begin to make it happen. In my discussions with the attorney for the Board of Education, he said the likelihood of less than a handful of cases a year might come up on this. This does not penalize the student. This is an ordinance that would permit the enforcement of this rule against the person that enrolls the student or registers the student at the school. It allows, if we were to go ahead with this, it would take the jurisdiction, you wouldn't lose the jurisdiction at the State Board of Education. You would gain jurisdiction locally in a municipality. This would also give the municipality not only the opportunity to fine, but also deal with restitution for the costs and administrative fees involved. The fact-finding and the effort that is made to identify such instances that would violate this is all done by the Board of Education. However, it gets prosecuted would then get prosecuted on a municipal court, so the village prosecutor would deal with it, and the village municipal judge and staff at in the municipal court would take care of the administering of the situation. But the restitution is an issue for the Board of Education, and the issue with regard to fines up to, the proposal right now is up to $2,000 without any real opportunity, and it's not really that type of situation that you might find that we have in other fines where there's a gradation depending upon the number of offenses. You would hope that this type of a situation would happen once, and that would be it if they were caught. So there's also some, direction with regard to how to determine the amount of the restitution, and that information is also provided by the Board of Education. So it's not as if we're creating a law, it's just a different method of enforcing it.
I have a question. So I know that there are some teachers in the school system that live outside of the school system and have their kids in the school. Is that going to apply to them as well?
I would imagine that it doesn't, because there's another rule or another law that allows the teachers or employees of the district to bring their children to school in this district.
So this is specifically when we met with Dr. Fishbein and Board Trustee Vince, President of the Board of Education. The indication was that the types of abuses a teacher sending their child to school in Ridgewood is actually entitled to do so. So the types of abuses that they are encountering are children that are actually illegally enrolled, just using an address, using a mailbox. Maybe they once, and I actually remember going back quite a number of years ago, where someone was renting and then their lease was either terminated for whatever reason, but then they continue using that address and just have mail forwarded from there. So it's those types of abuses. So somebody's clearly moved out of Ridgewood, but continuing to use the school system. And then, of course, whoever now is newly renting that location has more kids in the school. So it's a problem that they're coming across, and they're just looking for something with a little more teeth and expedience to it.
Correct.
So, Matt, what are the types of people and families that would do this? Are they people that can afford to even pay the fines?
I wouldn't have a clue as to the types of persons that utilize this or do it. I haven't had any experience or exposure to what the Board of Education's experience has been.
Okay. Thanks.
Good with this?
So is everyone okay to move forward with this?
Yeah.
Okay, I just know I want to speak with our court administrator again because she wasn't quite sure about the fines. And so I just want to make sure that the AOC would accept it, that we would accept fines as well as, get the Board of Ed their money. We don't get it for them, but it goes through our court. So.
Just very quickly, I wanted to respond to Councilman Voigt because there are instances where, sadly, some people are actually homeless, and this does not. I think maybe that's what you were asking. So this would not apply in that situation because when somebody's homeless, technically, you give them a place to be and to educate their children. So.
Right.
Okay. The next one is a shared services agreement for dewatered sludge disposal. This is a lovely one. So our current 3-year contract with Passaic Valley Sewage Commission under an interlocal agreement has expired. They're interested in renewing the contract, so are we. They currently charge us $48 per 1,000 gallons trucked to their facility in Newark. Probably the price would remain the same. The dollar value of the sludge the village disposes is in excess of $100,000 per year. So therefore, we want a formal shared services agreement with them. So in order for us to do this, we need to pass a resolution and then sign the agreement. So.
Sure.
Questions? No questions or comments?
Okay, the next one is updating the master plan. The New Jersey state statute provides that an ordinance authorizing special emergency appropriations so that we can engage special consultants for the updating of a master plan. It allows the village to finance it over a 5-year period, and Mr. Rooney wrote a memo indicating that currently we pay off $48,000 a year for a special emergency for revaluation, because that's another instance where you can pay it off over a 5-year period. That last appropriation is actually being paid this year. If we were to appropriate approximately $250,000, which is what Blaise Brancho, our former planner, estimated, That would be about $50,000. So really, there would be no tax impact because it's only a $2,000 difference over what we've been paying for the revaluation over these past 5 years. The only thing is there are various components to a master plan, and obviously the more that you put into a master plan, probably the better it is, but also the cost goes up. So I think what this council has to decide is what exactly they want as the components of the master plan, and probably this is something for the planning board to discuss and maybe bring back to us, or maybe you have, I don't know. And then once that's done, then we could probably get estimates as to how much that would cost us.
Yeah, so I think back in, when Blaze and I first started down this road, going back, it's got to be 1.5 years, 2 years ago now, I think at some point, I said, well, just give me the number for a full-blown, all soup to nuts master plan, and that's where that 250 came from. And so I'm comfortable that we're in the right number, and if we decide that certain components are not necessary, we're actually coming in at less. And then I think we haven't had much conversation with the planning board because I thought it was probably better at least to get to this point. And then the question as to whether or not we would go out for an RFP or RFP.
Yeah, we'd have to, but in order to do that, we would have to know what it is that we're going to include for the people who are, giving their proposals, you know.
So I think that's a conversation presumably it's a conversation for the planning board because we have our master plan, and maybe I did have, I think, 13 copies of the master plan, but some may have flown off. I had them all numbered, so I got them back. But if we have extra copies, we could just at least give them to council so everyone can understand what it is exactly, what that whole document looks like, and better understand. Maybe council members might have input, and I'm sure the planning board does because we just did our master plan reevaluation, whatever we just did. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So are you going to take the planning board, you'll discuss it there, you'll bring it back here, and then if any council members want additional, then we'll do that. So do you foresee we could do this on June 28th, or do you want to wait till July to discuss it?
We can do June 28th.
Okay, so we'll
because we have a regular planning board meeting, and I think we have a special meeting also scheduled. So we should be good.
Okay, so we'll
do we have time on I'm fine with discussing at the planning board. Do we have time on I know we have the Dayton coming up on the 20th. Can we squeeze it in?
Maybe we could squeeze it in at the end, because that application shouldn't take too long, I don't think.
Okay.
So we could we'll figure it out. We'll get it done.
So we'll discuss it again on June 28th, and hopefully the planning board will come back with something we can look at. The last item under operations is the New Jersey Transit Senior Bus Grant release. As you may know, we've operated and maintained a vehicle, a 2009 Chevrolet Eldorado, for special transit services. We use it for our senior bus. We use it for bringing some of our seniors to our HILT meetings here in Village Hall. So New Jersey Transit's community shuttle program, this vehicle is now depreciated in value to under $5,000. So at this point, they're going to retire the vehicle and release it to the village in as-is condition. There are no warranties. However, it does show normal evidence of wear and tear, but our bus driver, Billy Flynn, should be congratulated. He's a former truck driver, and he has been a great asset to us in helping us to know how to maintain this vehicle. So it really is in pretty good shape. So we recommend that the vehicle be accepted from New Jersey Transit, and we'll continue to use it for the senior bus. And it truly makes a difference in many of our seniors' lives. I know it goes to Ridgecrest. I know that I'll mention in my manager's report, but we're going to take some of our senior residents to Graydon Pool for a few times. And so basically to do this, we need a resolution to accept it. So.
Questions or comments? Can I just say before we go on, I actually, on the master plan, the funding for that, I meant to thank Bob Rooney, because having somebody who is familiar with municipal finance and the law really worked out for us. So I just want to say thank you for doing this for us. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so the next one is a review of next week's meeting. We have no proclamations. We have recognitions of some Ridgewood art ambassadors who are students. We have a public hearing, as I mentioned, the Historic Preservation Grant application for Phase 2 of the Zabriskie-Shedler House restoration. We have resolutions for Ridgewood Water for awarding contract for improvements to booster transfer stations, awarding contract for the design and construction of GAC treatment system at car treatment facility. Introduction of ordinances include amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic, establishing a stop sign at Upper Boulevard and Glenwood Road, amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic, parking regulations on Clinton. I guess we're going to put that off until we hear back from those residents. We're going to amend Chapter 222, power tools landscaping for holidays, federal holidays. And then we're also going to do an ordinance to prevent the unlawful enrollment of school-age children in Ridgewood schools, and possibly we'll do the bond ordinance for the update of the master plan after we get back and we know what we're looking at. The ordinances for public hearing include the amending Chapter 260 for trees and shrubs, and also amending Chapter 212 for parks and recreation areas, prohibition of dogs off leash in certain parks. Resolutions, we have some annual resolutions in June. One is waiving 4th of July vendor fees for those vendors who contribute some of their profits to the 4th of July committee, granting permission for a fireworks company for a fireworks display. We authorize a snow plowing agreement with Bergen County. This is year 2 of a 2-year agreement. We have Title 59 approval for the reconfiguration of the Ridgewood train station parking lot. We have award contract under state contract for e-ticketing software, awarding contract under state contract for furniture for Village Hall. We have award of contract for the second year for crossing guard services, award professional services contract for on-call traffic engineering services, authorizing a shared services agreement, disposal of dewatered sludge, approving a resource room at the Gatehouse at Irene Habernacle Family Park for the Women Gardeners of Ridgewood, authorizing the cleaning of Kings Pond Park by Ridgewood Wildscaping Partners, resolution in support of the FOP Awareness Initiative, approving, this is when we approve the renewal of our liquor licenses. We have to approve a 216, 217 for the Elks Club, and then also all of the renewals that we have for 17, 18. I have to make sure they all have tax clearance certificates, so as long as they do, we will, the majority of them do. So any that do not, we can hold off to the side and possibly have a special meeting on the 28th if need be. We're authorizing refund of taxes for a disabled veteran, appointing members to the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Adjustment, appointing the municipal court judge. We're refunding, I have that. We're urging the 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards to continue, appointment of the village attorney, the village labor attorney, and the village bond attorney, appointing municipal prosecutor, appointing the public defender and alternate public defender, appointing the community development representative, appointing the representative to Open Space Trust Regional Committee, that's a county committee, appointing members to Community Center Advisory Board, appointing members to the Ridgewood Arts Council, and then appointing village council members as liaisons to various boards and committees. Do you want any of those off of the consent agenda? No. Okay. So, next comes manager's report. Although the rain caused the annual Memorial Day service to be moved inside to Mount Carmel Church, we want to thank American Legion Post number 53 for organizing another outstanding tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. The annual Ridgewood Memorial Day run also had to deal with the weather, but it did not deter the runners from competing in the rain. Everything went well except for one runner who decided to try a 10K for the first time. When she completed the race, she needed some medical assistance, and I want to thank Ridgewood EMS crews who were able to treat this ambitious runner, and she recovered. Yesterday, all residents and businesses received a postcard, which I'm sure you recognize. This is the new permanent water regulations and conservation rules This is a card you can keep ready for reference. You can put it on your refrigerator or on your corkboard or wherever you post notices to remind yourself. If you do have any questions, there are phone numbers on here as well as email addresses. And I know our water department has fielded many questions and answered many emails on specifics for individual homeowners. So don't hesitate to call them or to contact them if you have questions. In addition, there is, if you notice non-compliant watering, there is an email address to report that to. It's reportwater@ridgewoodnj.net, or there's also a phone number. So we urge you to do that as well. The next one is Graydon Pool, opened last Saturday. Badge sales are about 300 more than last year at the same time. So right now we have, for 2017, 1,165 resident badges have been sold and 76 non-resident, for a total of 1,241. 2016, at this time, residents were 829 and non-residents were 101, for a total of 930. 6 free passes were also printed in the flyer, and they were used this past weekend. Reminder, you can still get your Graydon Pool season membership badges. They're available for purchase online through Community Pass. If you go on our website, right at the top is a picture of Graydon Pool. If you click on that, it will take you to the Community Pass sign up. And this year's theme at Graydon is There's Something for Everyone. Swimming and diving instruction, competitive swim team, stand-up paddleboard, yoga on the beach, kayaking introduction, story time under the pavilion, movies on the beach, live monthly concerts, and much more. So it's a wonderful place to go. There's a beach, there's a grassy area, there's a kiddie area. So it's a great place to be this summer. The Ridgewood Guild sponsors Music in the Night and Art in the Park programs every Friday night, providing various types of music throughout the CBD and artworks for sale at Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. This all benefits the Ridgewood Guild. This program will continue through September 1st. The 59th Catchall Memorial Shell season has begun. Last night they presented Ridgewood Art Beat 2017, which was a Girl Scout Gold Star project. It featured student talent from Ridgewood performing a cappella, rock and blues music. Tomorrow night, June 8th at 8 p.m., they will present the Harmony Celebration Chorus. This is the Sweet Adelines. I've actually seen them. They're excellent. And next Tuesday, June 13th, will be Richard Ryder Swing Band. Please see the Village's website under Departments and then click on Recreation for the full schedule. The Guild will also be starting their Movies in the Park June 14th with A Place in the Sun, followed by Singing in the Rain on June 28th. Bring a chair and enjoy the free movie. That's all I have.
Thank you. Just lost my voice. Councilman Voigt.
Thank you. Last night the planning board met. There were 3 major issues that were discussed. The first one was a review of a resolution for Chestnut Village, which is the housing development behind the Y on Chestnut Street. There were a number of items that needed to be clarified, and they will likely be first up for final approval on the 6/20 meeting. We had an interested developer/applicant who wants to upgrade the Ridgewood Auto facility, which is at 260 Franklin, which is the southwest corner of Franklin and Maple. They were looking for planning board's input and feedback on a potential use for a Chipotle grill and a Pilates instruction facility. There was a number of issues, obviously, that were talked about, and I think they're going to come back at some point, but the issues were parking, with traffic congestion, with access to the facility. So they'll probably be back sometime, I would guess, in the next couple of months. We also talked about a subdivision of a large property on the north side of East Glen Ave, which is east of Wilkes and west of Sterling Avenue. They're putting they're subdividing that particular property. And the main issue that we discussed and that came up was the number of trees that they want to remove. There's probably 20 or more that probably would have to be removed in order to kind of expand that particular area. They'll be back in front of the planning board on the 1st of August There is going to be a couple of upcoming site plan reviews. On the 20th is the Dayton. The Dayton is behind Mount Carmel. That'll likely be up for a vote. We have a special meeting on the 26th, KS Broad, which is at 7 p.m., and there will likely be a vote to take place on approval for both. Both of these particular site plan reviews will be televised, so if you can't come, you can certainly watch on TV. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, the Green Team has filed their application for the 2017 Sustainable Jersey. The deadline was Sunday. We submitted our application. I believe it was 410 points total, but then there's always a back and forth, so that might get whittled down. But we look like we're in pretty good shape to get certified at the next level. It's silver for 350 points. So I'd just like to thank Jiffy Vermillion, our chair of the Green Team, and everyone on the team who helped get us to this point. It was a daunting task at times, but we got it done. And then I'd also like to thank Tim Cronin and everyone in the Parks and Recreation Department who helped get Graydon ready for the opening day. The bathrooms were clean, the playground was gleaming, there was, water was great, everything was great. So it was a tremendous effort and really showed on that first day. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Councilwoman Walsh?
I actually don't have any reports. Our Arts Council meeting from last night is rescheduled for next Tuesday. Several members couldn't make it. Bergen League of Municipalities, our final meeting for this year, I guess, until we start back up in September, is next week. And Citizen Safety is in 2 weeks. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilman Hache?
Sorry, fairly quiet as well. I did want to provide everyone the update on the RHS Partying the Park, which was commemorating the 125 years of RHS. We had just over 300 people attend. It was an amazing event. It was the closest thing to having like a wedding on, in Vets Field as you can get. Music was great. Food was amazing. We had a lot of vendors, local vendors who participated and gave everyone a chance to sample some amazing food. Music was great because we had celebrity DJ, Nick Cannon. It was a lot of fun. And it was great because, I think people going into it assumed it was going to be sort of like a high school reunion across different classes. It wasn't at all. It was different grades, different folks, people who never even attended RHS. It was a great time to celebrate, and it was very well planned, very well coordinated. I think everyone had a great time. So I want to just provide that kind of update. I think we had just over 300 people, which is above the target that we wanted to have for the event. So I can't wait to celebrate 126. Just an update. I thought the village manager was going to cover this in her report. I don't want to steal your thunder if you want to. But we had received a request from a young man in town who was 12 at the time. This was part of his bar mitzvah project, and so he set out to reach out to different entities in town to help our senior residents. And one of the ideas that he came up with was having a Graydon Day for Ridgecrest residents. We worked that out now. We have officially the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month during the summer. We will have residents from Ridgecrest come into to Graydon. We've extended it also to the share houses as well. And I think the last piece that was missing was we were securing transportation to and from. And so I don't know where we were on that.
We've done so.
We've done so, okay.
Yeah,
So we're all set to go. Mm-hmm. So I just want to thank the wonderful young man for coming up with a way to improve the lives of our senior community. And just wanted to share a really nice experience I had this last Sunday. Was delighted to have been invited to attend an iftar from the Ridgewood Muslim community. Mayor Knudsen was there, Councilman Voigt was there as well. Great celebration. It was unbelievable. We did prayer in the courtyard, and just the atmosphere was just unbelievable. I think it was testament to seeing Ridgewood at its finest. And I think it reminded us of just how much more we have in common that unites us than the things that we have in, in differences that sets us apart. And it was amazing. And from there, we now have been invited to, I think we're getting invitations for another one, I think next week. So, but amazing. It was a joint effort with St. Elizabeth's and the Muslim Society of Ridgewood working together, and they were hosting it at St. Elizabeth's, so it was really nice.
So, is it?
That's it.
Actually, I was going to bring up the iftar also because when our friend Mahmoud made his comments, one of the things he said that was absolutely beautiful was that he had taken a walk in the morning to kind of put his thoughts in order, and that his observation was that we are all like a field of wildflowers, where all these wildflowers, all different flowers in the field, all sometimes moving in different directions, sometimes moving in the same direction, but all in the field nonetheless, and that's why we have to work together and get along. And it was just just a beautiful sentiment, and it was moving. And I think that St. Elizabeth parishioners were just absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful church, and that they opened their home and invited everybody in. It was absolutely beautiful. I just wanted to remind everyone that Saturday, June 10th, this Saturday, is Michael Feeney's Best Day Ever. And I don't recall the time. Is it 11 to 2? 10 to 2, okay. And, I'm sorry? No, it's okay, 10. Oh, 10 to 3, okay, good. I unfortunately can't make it, but I really encourage everyone to head on over to BF for Michael Feeney's Best Day Ever. If folks don't remember, hopefully everyone does, Michael Feeney died at the age of 10 years old. He was a member of our community, a Hawes student at the time. He died of cancer, and this marks a milestone. His classmates will be graduating 8th grade at BF this year. So it's really it's emotional, and it's really important. And the Best Day Ever, actually, if you can't make it and you just want to make a donation, is a GoFundMe page, and that money actually gives opportunity to sick children to have a Best Day Ever, and that's the purpose for that. So it's a great program. And July 4th is almost here, less than a month away. Visit the Ridgewood July 4th website, check it out. It's going to be an exciting day, and our next meeting is Monday, so be prepared, 4th of July. And with that,
I just wanted to mention one other thing. In addition, for our senior residents, we're going to provide them transportation to a couple of the Cashaw Shell performances. And so I know we're going to be doing 2 in June and possibly another one. But we'll see how that goes. But I'm sure there'll be interest, and it's something else we can do for them, so that if they don't want to drive at night, that they can still enjoy some of the recreational opportunities that we offer.
speaking of Casho, actually last night the Art Beat, Ridgewood High School Art Beat, was unfortunately rained out and wound up at the high school. But we were here at the planning board, and we were throwing the windows open so that we could get the music, and unfortunately we didn't have that opportunity. But I understand it was really a great show, great time for everyone. So with that, we are moving back to public comment.
Sorry about that.
Just
Rorik Halaby, 374 Evergreen. This is an American flag. This is a copy of the Constitution. You start every meeting with a pledge to the flag, and I should remind you that what you effectively are doing is pledging to uphold the Constitution. When you cynically engage in practices to intimidate and harass those who disagree with you, you are in effect making a mockery of your pledge of allegiance. Maybe Samuel Johnson had a point when he referred to patriotism as being the last refuge of scoundrels. Now, here I have an Oprah application by our deputy mayor, and I was proud to find myself among this august group of people. I'd like to know why my name was chosen to find out what correspondence I've had with Jeffrey Voigt. I need to find out why. Is it that I'm in cahoots with Jeffrey Voigt to sell the village secrets to the Russians? What's going on? Why did my name appear? Now, I applied then for an Oprah request myself, in which I asked Donna to give me every email in the last year that went in and out of Ms. Knudsen's and Seaton's emails, private and public, that mentions my name. Now, that's going to cost me over $1,000. So my second question is, what did the village charge Michael Seaton for his request? What is the village charging all of the mayor's friends who are barraging the village with requests for Oprah requests? Are they being charged this kind of money? Is there a listing of prices that apply to everyone? I'm not going to pay 1 penny more, even though I've paid my down payment, about 70%, about $700. I'm going to pay 1 more penny than Michael Seaton has paid. Now, I will give the village until Wednesday of next week to answer these 2 questions. Why was my name selected by Michael Seaton? Secondly, what is Michael Seaton being charged for his Oprah request, and what your followers are being charged for their Oprah request? If by next Wednesday I do not have an answer, I will have to take legal remedy. I'm sorry to do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I did not come to this country to be intimidated. I did not come to this country to stand in fear of anyone. Let me make that clear to you. Now, to move on to another subject, the garage. The mayor emphasizes the detail of the design, including the eyebrow windows, the awnings, incorporating the sculpture that came from the old firehouse, which I think is a good idea, and planting ivy to cover the walls. Madam, to use an Iowa expression, you are putting lipstick on a pig. The only thing missing from the Pike design is a huge neon sign that says, "Welcome to Newark Airport." What miserable arrogance and hubris to have discarded $600,000 worth of studies incurred by the previous council on their studies in the garage, and to think of the beautiful architectural design that was so respectful of the village, and to think it was just flushed down the drain. Now, in spite of the deputy mayor's statement at a recent meeting of involving the community, there has been only one public meeting outside of here, one at Mount Carmel. The mayor mentioned how this was done since the church had so much at stake. Yes, the church is a stakeholder, but let us not forget the other stakeholders, the commuters, the village owners.
Well, if you don't mind, just wrap it up because the beeper went off.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, one other thing, I suggest you look up the definition of ad hoc. You use it as if you know what you're talking about. You do not. Ad hoc means limited application, limited time.
Okay.
No.
All right. Very good.
Show my goodwill. I have bought a flag.
All right. You know what? I'm going to just tell you that you have to just have a seat, and you can pass those out at the end of the meeting if you'd like. Just real quick, and I will answer. Council members are charged the same rate as anyone else for an Oprah request. So there's no, there shouldn't be. I don't know what Deputy Mayor Seaton Oprah'd, so I don't know what he's charged, but what his amount is. But I do know that council members are charged exactly the same as any other resident. in terms of the comment that my friends or whomever are opering, I made one oper for a very specific purpose. Beyond that, I'm not familiar with what anyone else is opering. So I don't know where you're getting your information from. Nobody's doing anything for me. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other public comments?
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'd just like to comment on the bathroom situation. I agree with Mr. Seaton. You do not wish to be the council that
I'm
spends...
sorry, Boyd, can I just want to, okay.
This is my gift to you. For you to wave the flag and remember what it means to be an American.
I know what it means, but thank you. Okay.
Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Just want to comment on the bathroom situation. I agree with Mr. Seaton. You do not. Nobody who's sitting up there now wants to be the council that spends $500,000 on a bathroom. And it certainly looks like it may be headed in that direction if you're planning on spending $30,000 on the design of a bathroom. Mr. Rudeshauser was up here previously this evening and said that he thought that the cost for the bathroom would come in at between $180,000 and $240,000. I sound like a broken record, I know, when I keep repeating this, but I remember that this building was said to was going to cost $4 million. The price tag came in somewhere between $11 and $13 million. The village can't seem to build things for what it is supposed to cost. So I'm estimating that if Mr. Rudeshauser indicates that the bathrooms are going to cost between $180,000 and $240,000, tag another couple $100,000 onto that, and you're almost up to $500,000. So be very cautious with this bathroom project. I was on the Graydon Ad Hoc Committee, and it was our intent just to spruce up the interiors of the bathrooms. I don't know how you could possibly spend $240,000 on a spruce up, but I do know this. When I moved to Ridgewood and started getting estimates for doing things in my house, I would call people on the phone and they would say, "Where do you live?" "Oh, Ridgewood. That is going to cost you a little bit extra." So I imagine that the same thing is happening to you now. When people see Village of Ridgewood, the price tag goes up. I would ask that you all please try to put the brakes on this before it gets out of control. We do not need another $400,000 bathroom. We need a spruce up, and that's basically all we need. Now, on the subject of bathrooms, I just wish that the manager would comment after I finish my comments. Oh, there was some question about keeping the bathrooms at the stable open. I remind you that when the stable was renovated, there was a comment made that one of the reasons for the renovation was that there were going to be bathrooms that were going to be available for the athletes. Last year, those bathrooms were locked at all times. They were never opened. So are they open this year, or is there a plan to open them this year or not? The other comment I'd like to make is regarding an incident that happened on Saturday or Sunday. I spoke to the mayor about it. That is, all of a sudden these signs, these election signs, started to appear all over town. I don't know how it happened. I see that the staff has gotten most of them, if not all of them, down. I would just encourage us to have a plan for the future. November is rapidly approaching. I would suggest that any village employee who sees one of those signs placed illegally be directed to remove them and it not be all fall onto one group. I just was amazed that all these signs went up overnight. And we have an ordinance 3540 that prohibits that. So that ordinance should be enforced in the future, and as soon as the sign goes up, that sign should come down if it's in a public right-of-way on public property. Couldn't believe somebody put one up in front of the fire headquarters. They were up at Graydon Pool. I'm glad that they're all down now, but it was kind of disheartening to see them all up.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dana Glazer, 61 Clinton Avenue. I'd just like to state for the record that Mayor Knudson's name is pronounced Knudsen, and that to speak her name otherwise, when to know that it is Knudsen and not something else, is, in my opinion, very disrespectful. So on behalf of the public, I apologize to you. In terms of Clinton Avenue, as I am a resident, I was very surprised at what Chris Rudehauser was bringing up today. My expectation was that it would be specifically about just the timing of the between 8 and 9, which I think is very reasonable, and between 2:30 and 3:30, also equally reasonable. I have attended the Citizen Safety Committee meetings in the past. I know that the last time I was there, the chairperson said that the residents of Clinton Avenue should be conferred in terms of this task force that had been created to talk about, the safety issue and such before anything further happened. And I find it very upsetting that I'm sitting here and this presentation is occurring that's suddenly out of the blue that I knew nothing about, and nor did any of the residents on Clinton or anywhere around us knew anything about. So I just want to share that that's very upsetting for me, and I suspect for most of the residents that are my neighbors as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana.
Good evening, Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Just a couple of comments. One comment was made, I don't remember by who, that regarding the Shedler task force, which I totally support, that you create a task force for that. But the comment was made that Shedler's not currently being used, but it is being used. It's a buffer for the residents of that neighborhood. It's a residence for all kinds of animals and plant life, and so it is being used. It's not being used. The other thing I wanted to say was about the 2 lanes over at Garber Square. I clearly remember it the way somebody on the dais mentioned tonight, that I thought we were told when they narrowed that Belgian block curb and extra money was spent to narrow it down. I thought that the previous village manager clearly said that if it didn't work out, we could go back to 2 lanes, and that was part of the thought process in having the narrower Belgian block thing instead of that wide one, that we could go back. So I find it, kind of surprising now that we can't go back to 2 lanes. It's not that long ago that we did that. But anyway, that's just my other comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I just wanted to comment, I think that the bathrooms will be open. I don't know the hours, but I can find out for you and let you know. Mr. Glazer, I just want to let you know that Mr. Redesauser just had that conversation today with Sergeant Chuck and Chief Lucky, and so therefore the council didn't even know about it. I learned about it when I returned. I had gone to dinner and came back, and I learned about it then. I thought I would bring it up, have them discuss it, but you don't need to be concerned, because what the council has requested is that we do the time frame, because we want it in place for September. So that's what we're going to do. That's the ordinance that's going to be put forth, so you can assure your neighbors that's what we're looking at, okay? I think, and the other thing I do want to mention is not every OPA request is charged. It's only if it exceeds a certain number of pages or a certain number of hours to provide the information, and if it doesn't take that, it's an extraordinary amount of time or extraordinary volume, and that's when we charge. And other than that, we don't charge unless people want copies, physical copies. Then we are permitted under OPA law to charge 5 cents for 8.5 by 11 and 7 cents per page for legal size paper. But other than that, we don't normally charge.
So I had actually 2 things. So when the signs kind of popped up overnight, because I don't recall them being, I was around Saturday, I don't recall there being so many signs. And once it was brought to the village manager's attention, kind of almost a all points bulletin went out, and everybody was picking up the signs, so they were cleared pretty quickly. And I just wanted to ask out there, how is the sound? Because Dylan really did work. He put a lot of effort into this, and I'm just curious to know from the back, how is this sounding tonight? Is it better? Is it clearer? Is it louder?
Thumbs up, down?
Thumbs up?
It's better, but it depends on who's there. Some people have a very soft voice, and I just, no matter what you do, it's not going to help.
Okay, all right. That was just a shout out.
There's a hollowness.
I'm sorry.
Quality.
Yeah, like an echoey thing.
Yes, kind of makes it difficult in a different way to hear.
Okay.
I'm noticing it also has to do with where you're sitting and whether you're closer or further away. And Heather in particular, I think what I've noticed is that when you're speaking with your head up and above the microphone, it's very clear. Okay. And when you're reading, you're down maybe at a level or lower than that, then it sounds as if you have mashed potatoes in your mouth.
Okay. All right, so this was an impromptu feedback session, so we're still tweaking it, so we appreciate the feedback, and hopefully there wasn't a lot of feedback. But, okay, thank you, and with that, we'll take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on June 7th, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room on the 4th floor of Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include co-litigation, Valley Hospital, unauthorized disclosure of attorney-client information, employment resumes, and health fund personnel issues to include appointments to boards and committees liaisons. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 at sec. And be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.